For those of you who don't know what goes on here, this is an exercise really in amateur radio. And each week I host a program largely of spoken word material on ham radio, starting at 9:30 p.m. It's that time right now. So I hit that button and I go on the air. Hello, this is VK3 Alpha Mike Lima with the regular Saturday night transmission of historical and documentary material as a test. VK3 Alpha Mike Lima. And the chimes come through, but about 10 dB too high. VK3AML with the first mistake of the night. Well, hasn't it been an eventful week? I had the opportunity of meeting quite a few of you. The radio listeners, hi Terry. VK3FTJS is watching on the stream, I see. We had a Hamfest, sort of a car boot sale on a massive scale at Moorabbin last Saturday morning, and I met many of the regular listeners and participants in the chat that follows the regular transmission that I make here of a Saturday night, both on 147.475, 2 meters ham radio, and on the live stream, which if you want to look in is found by searching for VK3AML 15 May 2021. That's on internet, Google search VK3AML 15 May 2021. You'll probably be able to hear some fans running in the background. It has been a bitterly cold day by Melbourne standards, really bitterly cold. Down near freezing at the moment outside, so I have the fan heater blowing comforting breezes across me here, and I hope it's not too obtrusive on the microphone. It probably will be comparable to the level of the cooling fans in the power supply here. And I was just checking to see whether they were running. I see we've got 6 people on the stream already, and probably an equivalent number on ham radio. Tonight, most of what I'll be dealing with has to do with the Bass Strait Islands and the venture that VK3ASC Dave Stewart, VK3SL Steve Langley, myself and Steve's son Henry, VK3FACT, made to Deal Island in the middle of Bass Strait in January. I'll be playing back the night that we spent on 80 metres, talking to people back in Melbourne, describing what we were doing. Bit of my background in Bass Strait history. In 1976, I was involved for about 12 months with the start of community radio station 3CR, 840 kilohertz, one of the few public broadcasters to be allocated an AM rather than FM license. And of course, it was one of the first community licenses to be granted in Melbourne. I worked there for 12 months, largely doing as a hobby my first efforts in documentary program, particularly documentary history, not unlike what I'm doing tonight. Isn't it funny how life follows a circular path? Anyway, at that station I saw the manifestation of a great deal of creativity for the first few months, followed by a great number of splits and political divisions in later months where I actually observed stacking of decision-making meetings going on and the entrenchment of certain extreme parts of the militant left. I mean, I vote Labor, but I wouldn't call myself a militant leftist or a communist or anything of the sort. But unfortunately, a few of the people in the station who held the upper hand at that time, 1976, 77, were. So I also had the first great relationship of my life at 3CR. And when my relationship with the station started to crumble in 1977, the relationship with the girl concerned crumbled also. So I was looking at having a new start. So in the middle of 1977, I disentangled myself with all involvement with 3CR. I had done a couple of professional programs for the ABC by that time, so on return to Melbourne, I could get stuck into that side of my work. But to clear out the cobwebs and to give myself a new start and a new perspective on life, I very dramatically, as you do when you're 22 years old, drew a 250-mile circle around Melbourne. I reckoned that was about all I had money to travel to. And I picked what I thought would be the most isolated spot in that circle, a spot called Flinders Island in Bass Strait off the northeast tip of Tasmania, a small community of about 1,000 souls spread through about 3 or 4 villages at that stage. Lady Barron in the south, White Mark on the west, Emitter and Polana, and the embryo of what's now a village at Killiecrankie Bay in the north, Flinders Island, which very few of my contemporaries even knew existed. And hello to John Young and Jam Diversified on our list there. Anyway, Melbourneites generally don't give Flinders Island too much of a thought, but you should consider it. It is Australia's 4th largest island after Tasmania, Groot Island in the Gulf of Carpentaria, Kangaroo Island in South Australia, and then number 4 in size is Flinders Island. It really is rather big. It's a very similar sort of environment to Wilson's Promontory. It's part of the granite belt that runs from Wilson's Promontory down through all of the small Bass Strait Islands to Flinders, Cape Barren Island and Swan Island, then down the east coast of Tasmania to terminate in Coles Bay, the Freycinet Peninsula. So characteristically, it was very beautiful country, mountainous, granite, lots of those rocks by the beach with the pink lichens on them, which gave the Bass Strait rocks that characteristic reddish hue. I thought that I would be able to isolate myself in an island community, but I found that quite the opposite was the case. As soon as I got there, everybody and his dog wanted to know who I was, what I was doing there, how they could help me, which was a surprise, or if they could give me some employment. So off I went to Flinders Island, intending to stay a few weeks, and I ended up staying 6 months. And it gave me a whole new outlook on life. One of the people that wrote references for me in advance of my going there so that I'd have some work, either hay carting or helping with farm labour, or, as it turned out, helping with the running of the embryonic stages of a wildlife conservation park called the Patriarch's Reserve, which has gone from strength to strength since. It's now a major tourist attraction on Flinders, the Patriarch's Reserve, on the east coast of Flinders, the least populated part of the island. One of the people that wrote me references to various prominent Flinders Island people was an academic, a very, very sweet man named Stephen Murray Smith, Professor Stephen Murray Smith of the University of Melbourne, Reader in Education at the University of Melbourne. He had a lifelong interest in the Bass Strait Islands since first going on an archaeological dig there in 1949, I think it was, to the major limestone caves at Ranga on Flinders Island. He did some digging there, looking for deposits indicating early Australian megafauna and human occupation. Stephen was an inspiring writer. He started the magazine Overland, the literary magazine Overland. He was based in Mount Eliza, Tea Tree Lane, and born 1930, died 1987. So in 30, died 1987. So he's been gone 34 years now. But one of his essays that inspired me to go to Flinders Island originally is one that I'm about to read. And it was broadcast by the ABC as a lecture, as a broadcast in 1969. And so many things have changed, which I'll draw your attention to when I've finished reading. This is VK3 Alpha Mike Lima testing. Hello, Bill Rizos, who's on our chat stream there, and Jeff Sylvester. So, Stephen Murray Smith writes about Bass Strait's discovery and exploration. Like so many things in early Australia, it started with grog. And there's even an island named Rum Island to prove it. I flew over Rum Island just the other day, a little Pope's nose of an island hard by Preservation Island. I'd like to be able to say that I could still sniff the spirits, rough old Bengal rum it was too, 600 feet up and 170 years later. But you wouldn't believe me. The best I can do is to say that a local fisherman told me that they'd found a puncheon of rum there just the other day. I don't believe him. Rum Island and Preservation Island. They roll off the tongue, those names. They're good names, even in a sea of islands where there are many marvellous names waiting for a poet they've never had. Tin Kettle Island, Gun Carriage Island, Pea Jacket Point, Badger Corner, Killiecrankie Bay, Thunder and Lightning Bay. Let the rum wait for a minute. Let's go back before the grog. The early explorers from Tasman on skirted gingerly around the bottom of what we now call Tasmania. Some asked themselves if it might be an island, but none deliberately sought an answer. The reason was clear enough. After Tasman, everyone knew there were good anchorages down south there, and that was the place you made for after a racking voyage running you easting down over thousands of miles of stormy Indian seas. But once there, you wouldn't want to beat back against the westerlies, nor would you want to coast closely up the Tasmanian east coast when a southeasterly, not uncommon, could quickly put you on a lee shore. That's exactly the way that Tobias Furneaux felt about it in 1773. He was captain of the Adventure and cook of the Resolution on Cook's second voyage. They lost each other somewhere in the South Indian Ocean and didn't meet up again until New Zealand 3 months later. In the interim, Furneaux nearly did discover Bass Strait. He got near enough to spy in the distance Flinders Island and what we now know as the Furneaux Group. But he got frightened of the weather and he turned away. The secret was to be a secret for another quarter century yet. The first fleet came round Van Diemen's Land, and so did the second, and most of the ships that came to Australia, to New Holland, to Botany Bay, as they called it in those first 10 years. Those that didn't come south about came north about, through the treacherous tropical seas, or perhaps directly across the Pacific from Cape Horn. The key in this 200-mile-wide keyhole was turned by the Sydney Cove. Captain Hamilton, master, out of Calcutta with 7,000 gallons of rum and other cargo for her namesake destination. She was battered by gales, this unfortunate ship, nearly the whole of her way south and then east. Some of her Lasalle group crew died manning the pumps, and finally she was blown by an easterly gale through what we now know as Banks Strait off the northeast tip of Tasmania, and was run ashore by the 80-year-old captain on a little island. They all got ashore safely, and that's why it's called Preservation Island. They might have stayed there a long time. In fact, they might have even perished there, but for one of the first and one of the greatest stories of human endurance in Australia. The ship's longboat was sent off with 5 white men and 13 Lasars to make its way to Sydney. Within a fortnight, they were wrecked on the 90-mile beach. There was nothing for it but to walk over several hundred miles of totally unknown bush and coast. They were harassed and speared by the blacks, though they were sometimes helped by them too. Within a month, 9 of the 18 had died. Another month, and there were only 3 left, a European and 2 Lasars. They were picked up at Coalcliff, south of Botany Bay, and taken by boat to Sydney. This is 1798. But 3 was enough. It set the wheels turning. A little vessel called the Francis went down to Preservation to rescue the survivors of the Sydney Cove. On board was a young man named Matthew Flinders, 23 years old. While he was away, another young man of spirit, George Bass, also had been down in Bass Strait, but this time skirting the northern edges of it. This was Bass's great journey to Western Port Bay in his 28-foot whaleboat, powered by 6 strong convict oarsmen. It was a voyage, Flinders said many later, it was a voyage which has not perhaps its equal in the annals of maritime history. We can see these 2 young men sitting over their grog when they got back to Sydney. We even know pretty well what they said to each other. They talked about currents and tides and the run of the swell, and they came to the conclusion that what they had sailed into was not a great embayment, but almost certainly a strait that would cut 600 or 700 miles off the sea route to Sydney, a strait that would be the only bottleneck on the whole run from Europe. In other words, a strait that would have incalculable economic and defence significance. And they talked too about the seals, the fur seals, so numerous that the rocks of Bass Strait seemed to crawl. The seals that were to be the first great economic export staple of Australia, in the shape of skins and oil. The seals that were to be to the Australia of the first vital 20 years of last century what sheep were to become thereafter. Governor Hunter sent Bass and Flinders south in the Norfolk in 1798 to look for their open seaway. Beating down with them went Captain Bishop in the Nautilus. Bass and Flinders were looking for fame, but Bishop was looking for money. By the time Bass and Flinders worked their way west to Hunter Island and saw the westerly swell beating insistently on Shingle Reef and knew that they had succeeded, Captain Bishop and his men were clubbing the seals and skinning them in their hundreds and in their thousands, and were setting up in Kent Bay on the south coast of Cape Barren Island, the first settlement in Australia outside the Sydney area itself. Within months, adventurers were pouring south to the Straits. The Sydney merchants were frantically fitting out ships to reap the fortune in sealing or whaling them. Convicts with an eye to freedom were thinking that the Bass Strait Islands were nearer than China, and those avid moneymakers, the Yankee merchants of New England, were planning their raids on the Australian sealing islands that were in their time to lead not a few split heads and diplomatic processes. So Bass Strait's bridal day had come, but what kind of a bride was she? What is Bass Strait? Most Australians these days think of it as a half-hour gutter between the mainland and our island state. There's a lot you can't see from 20,000 feet. Bass Strait is not a few islands surrounded by a lot of water. It would be almost as true to say that it consists of a lot of islands in a bit of sea. Not quite as true, really, because when a shark or cray boat does only 7 or 8 knots, it takes 17 hours to get back home to Port Albert or Port Welshpool from down in the Sounds between Flinders Island and Cape Barren Island. And in 17 hours, or indeed a couple of hours, a placid, easy sea, no more than a little jobbly, as I've heard it called, can become a monstrous thing, great waves splintering themselves against the granite rocks and the islands, and a screaming wind obliterating with drift the sea and the land and the sky itself. No man who's been caught by a sudden change on Bass Strait will ever deny there's a lot of sea there, least of all the fishermen, among whom there are remarkably few fools. They watch the horizon, these men, when they're out there, just as primitive man watched the tree line and the skyline, constantly vigilant. Well then, there's a lot of sea, but there's a lot of land too. Too much land for seamen to trust, as the widows of nearly 2 centuries could tell us. There are, it's said, 126 pieces of land in Bass Strait. Some are mere rocks poking out of the sea, like Skull Rock, which many have seen off Wilson's Promontory, or the prominent Devil's Tower, 363 feet high in the Curtis Group. Many Victorians too will have seen Redondo, the big cone of granite 6 miles off the Prom, which John Bechervaise and his Geelong College boys landed on in 1947 and which no one has been on before or since. There are many less spectacular islands, mere domes of granite, rising like migrating whales from beneath the sea. The Hogans, for instance, east of the promontory, Brian Stackhouse of Flinders Island, pastures fine cattle there, where you wouldn't think a hare could scratch a living. Round Flinders Island in particular, there are dozens of small islands inhabited once by Robinson Crusoe families, but deserted now, the floors of the old houses crumbling, strange old Bibles sometimes found in dark corners, snakes living in old ovens which once fed a swarm of lively dark-skinned youngsters. Of all the Bass Strait Islands, only 7, so far as I know, are permanently inhabited. Perhaps 3,500 people live in Bass Strait, but of course a great many more people make their living from it. The Western Straitsmen, as they once used to be called, live on King Island, bang in the middle of the western end of Bass Strait, between the northwestern Horn of Tasmania and Cape Otway in Victoria. Rather more than 2,000 Australians live there, raising their cattle and sheep on an island which is physically not dramatic, but which has a long history of drama and of horror, which I'll talk about later in this series of broadcasts. The other Western Straitsmen live on 3 Hummock Island, south of King, 2 of them forming a large and lovely island, John and Eleanor Alliston, in 15 years of isolation and hard labour, have made this corner of Bass Strait their own. You can read about it in Eleanor Alliston's book, Escape to an Island. The Eastern Straitsmen are less numerous but more widely dispersed. For here, south and east of Wilson's Promontory, we have the tattered remains of the old land bridge between the mainland and Tasmania, over which those poor departed folk, the Tasmanian Aboriginals, probably migrated. You could almost island hop on a log across Bass Strait here now, provided you had a good outboard motor on the back. This is the corridor for light aircraft making their way to and from Tasmania. and the helicopter pilots from the oil rigs ranging wide over the sea can usually find some kind of land in sight out of the corner of their eyes just in case they need it. An airplane comes down over the promontory, swings out to the Hogans, then over 20 miles of open sea to the lovely Kent Group with its 1,000-foot pink granite cliffs and its sheltered sandy coves. Another leap of 20 miles or so and we're over Flinders Island, and from here we're overland nearly all the way to Tasmania, with the exception of the last 9 miles or so over Banks Strait. Never run away with the idea that all these Bass Strait Islands are tiny. Flinders is over 500,000 acres. King is over 250,000. Cape Barren, 100,000. As many skippers have found, they are big lumps of land to run into on a dark night. This is VK3AML testing, incidentally, and also streaming on internet on YouTube Live, which you can find by Googling VK3AML 15 May 2021. Back to Stephen Murray Smith's lecture. Flinders Island is not only the biggest, but in many ways the most interesting of the Bass Strait Islands. Here, in the early days, the sealers and the escaped convicts and the wreckers congregated with their kidnapped native women. Here, George Augustus Robinson brought the pitiable remnants of the Tasmanian Aboriginals, and here, in the 1830s and the 1840s, at a place called Wyberlena, they nearly all died away. We know they sat on the hillsides looking at the blue shadow of Tasmania on the horizon and weeping uncontrollably. And we can still see here the brick chapel they built with their own hands and in which they were taught the catechism. In terms of the associations it conjures up, this is one of Australia's most sad and significant historical buildings, and it's now being used as a tumble-down shearing shed for want of a few dollars to buy it for the National Trust. If anyone's willing to help, will they please write to me, care of the ABC? And they did, incidentally. It was restored in the 1970s. Flinders Island, too, is an island of magnificent spectacle. The cloud-topped Strzelecki Peaks, soaring to over 2,500 feet, dominate the south of the island and are greeted over the few isle-studded miles of Franklin Sound by the almost equally impressive peaks of Cape Barren Island, where you'll find the last of the Cape Barren Islanders, whom the anthropologist Norman Tyndale has called, and I quote, a whole new human population brought into being by hybridization. A pathetically shrunken group of people today, once they were a vigorous and prolific lot, sprung from runaway whites and Tasmanian Aboriginals and Australian Aboriginals, as well as American Negroes and Polynesians. As I speak these words, they are out on Great Dog and Little Dog Island, engaging in the great annual activity of mutton birding, which takes up most of the months of April and May. There are now about 70 of the Cape Barren Islanders left in residence, with a little school for their dozen or so children. But there are about 1,000 Straitsmen over on Flinders Island nearby, farmers mainly, divided among New Island people, which means soldier settlers, and Old Island people, some of whom, like fine old Frank Jackson, can still show you their bullock wagons. Apart from these populations, we have only 3 lighthouse outposts that are inhabited on Cliffy, Deal and Swan Islands, which I'll be talking about later in the series. Bass Strait is a frontier where men and women and children live a Hebridean existence between land and sea. Fishing and farming often go together, and so does a resourcefulness and a tenacity which it's great to see. These islands are tough to master, but this means that they haven't yet been spoiled. Perhaps here, at least in Australia, we will find the wisdom to preserve the character of the land and life, even if we're destroying it elsewhere. That was written by Stephen Murray Smith for an ABC broadcast in 1969. That being read, I'll go over to a replay of the transmission we made from Deal Island in the middle of Bass Strait, exactly halfway between the southern tip of Wilson's Promontory and the northern tip of Flinders Island, the pole of inaccessibility. We tried to get there 5 times before finally getting the weather and the supplies and the boat and the charter all sorted, and finally got there in January of this year. So let's have a listen to the log record of Steve, VK3SL, myself, Dave, VK3ASC, and various people on the mainland transmitting on 3670 kilohertz on the 10th of January this year. If I can find it on my list. And this is actually recorded on the spot. Sunday the 10th, and this is approximately 8:30 p.m. Hello, this is VK3 Alpha Mike Lima, VK3AML, calling CQ on 3670. Hello, CQ, VK3 Alpha Mike Lima on Deal Island in Bass Strait. On Deal Island in Bass Strait, calling CQ and standing by.
VK3AML, VK3 Mike Echo Tango on an old TS820S radio. How are you, my friend?
Hello. You sound a little off frequency. It might be me. We succeeded in the light beam stuff. Got through to VK3WRE, Ralph, and Chris, VK3CJK, from the lighthouse using modulated light last night. Quite a climb to get there, particularly carrying all the gear, the tripods, the amplifiers, the lithium batteries, and the optical unit. But it was great fun. Dave has set up this location. We're on a sort of a grassy knoll at the back of a part of Deal Island called Garden Cove, and using an FT817. It's only about 8 watts, I think, something like that. Hope you're hearing me well, Craig. And how are you going? VK3MET, VK3AML, under canvas.
Yeah, VK3AML, VK3MET. I'm good, my friend. I'm sorry about being off frequency. I'm in the middle of repairing this old Kenwood TS820S valve radio on the bench. So if it explodes and I go off air, you'll know why. But congratulations on your experiments. We heard about that on the national WIA news this morning. So congratulations there. And I'm in the shack out the back. It's very hot here today, probably 30 plus degrees. It's going to be, I think, 36 tomorrow. My wife, Karen, is in the shack here, and we're just staying here a little bit longer tonight in the hope that we might be able to hear you on. Over?
Yeah, sorry about the delay. I was just taking a photograph of the sunset here. It really is superb. If you know what Wilson's Promontory is like, Deal Island is like that, but on steroids and with no people. It's an island about 8 kilometres by 8, very mountainous. The west coast has the highest cliffs in Bass Strait. God, it's a beautiful sunset. There are cirrus clouds all tinged pink as I speak. And we've had a lovely day. It hasn't got above 25 degrees here. Of course, we have the moderating influence of Bass Strait. Hello to your missus too. I've never can remember her name. I'm sorry about that, but she sat in the background of many conversations. I'm actually about, about 200 metres from where our camp is, and I'm the first up here on 80 metres. Steve 3SL, Dave 3ASC, and Steve's son, Henry, who's VK3FACT, are all sitting next to their tents having a bit of a cup of coffee while I'm over here talking on the radio. But I'm sort of sitting on a sandy ground. There's an old telegraph pole used in the days of the lighthouse, which was decommissioned in 1991. And we've tied a squid pole to that with an 80-metre dipole. So I hope it's working well. What sort of signal are we putting in? VK3MET, VK3AML?
Yeah, VK3AML, VK3MET. Well, this is a 50-year-old hybrid that I'm currently tuning up and repairing. I mean, on that, you're a 5x8, but I'm only using I'm using an 80-metre off-centre fed dipole, but it's not my main antenna. So on the main antenna, I think we'd both be doing a bit better, but you're certainly very readable. 5.8, I would say here, Chris. Over.
Okay, considering the power, that's not too bad. I think this was originally a sand hill, runs inland, sort of at right angles to the beach, strangely, on the side of a creek. No mosquitoes. The only problem we've had is march flies, and they only concentrate where the freshwater creeks run out through the sand into the sea, as we found this morning. And we went up to the lighthouse settlement the last few days, the settlement that was established in 1848. Took a tremendous amount of video, lots and lots of photographs. During our attempt on the optical record, Dave 3ASC shot a lot of 4K video with lights, and we recorded everything of the optical contact on a digicorder, which I'm actually using at the moment to record my 80-metre transmissions here just for future reference. You are thundering in here, Mr. Craig. You're thundering in something like 20 over 9, and it's probably going to get better as the night rolls on. VK3MET, this is VK3 Alpha Mike Lima, portable VK7 on Deal Island, Bass Strait.
Oh, that's good, Chris. It's good to know. Again, this is a 50-year-old radio. It's working on all bands, although 10 metres it doesn't tune up at all. So I was going to have a look at that sometime soon. But obviously, I'm getting out. I've been tuning it with frequency counters and other, RF synthesizers and bits and pieces to bring it back to a bit of love. But so this record that you've now set. Is it going to be in the news? Are you going to publish it in the paper? Are you going to be on, the Dave Letterman show? What's happening?
Oh, I think it's going to be more or less a footnote in the history of telecommunications, but it is significantly the first VK7, VK3 two-way speech modulated optical contact. And from that point of view, it has some significance. The distance was about 130 kilometres, I think. So it's not quite up to the big distance we did in Tasmania in 2005, but it's significant. And I'll certainly be putting a recording with video clips up on YouTube eventually, and might even hawk it round the radio clubs as a syllabus item. I think people would be interested. We've also... I set up a station on VHF at a slightly higher location than this, back towards the lighthouse settlement today, and was talking through all sorts of repeaters, particularly the one we're getting East Gippsland repeaters, particularly Mount Nowa, and one at Delegate, of all places, Delegate, Delegate. And through that, I spoke to somebody who's going to ring Anthony 3JIA in South Gippsland to tell him we're on. We should be locals to him. The views here are terrific. The weather couldn't be better. Light breeze, warm but not hot. The visibility has been extremely good. Sitting at my VHF location about 1 kilometre from here, I can look across Bass Strait quite clearly to the hills of Wilson's Promontory. Mount Verica, Mount Latrobe, Mount Oberon, could see them all. In fact, they have a seat there, a park seat, put in by National Parks. It's called the Telstra seat because from that particular point you can look through a range of hills at Mount Oberon, which gives you connection via mobile phone. That's enough for one over. I'm raving. But we are having a great deal of interesting times and fun. But the climb up to the lighthouse, very steep four-wheel drive track from sea level going up 1,000 feet, that really was taxing. I am 66. I have to give something into age. VK3MET, VK3AML portable VK7 on Deal Island, Bass Strait.
Yeah, VK3AML, VK3MET. I've just switched to a different radio. Can you hear me on this one any differently, Chris?
About the same signal strength, but that one has slightly more pleasant audio.
Well, there you go. This one's probably only about 20 years old instead of the other one that was a valve radio that was 50 years old. So actually I might be able to even push TX. Does it sound any different now?
No, nothing noticeable.
Okay, this one's supposed to have a processor, all right, so nothing noticeable. Have I got that on? Let me just find out. Hang on. What about now? Any difference now?
Put it this way, could you pass a vomit bucket?
There you go. All right, so back to the original settings. How does that sound?
Much, much more pleasant. I think you only need that sort of push when you're really pushing it against noise and you're not here. I mean, you're over 9, mate, well over 9.
Oh, that's good. Well, you're actually over 9 on this radio as well, but this radio can be a little bit generous. I mean, my background noise is about S9 in Melbourne as well. So, well, congratulations again. An excellent result. I mean, I knew you'd do it. I mean, if anybody could do it, it would be you. So, congratulations to you and your team there. And my wife is very excitedly looking at the map here in the shack and pointing at where you are and saying, that's where he is, that's where he is. So she's, you've made her very proud. 3 Alpha Tango X-ray.
Yes, VK3ATX. I spoke to you earlier in the night. You're only about strength 4, but quite Q5. And g'day again. I think I spoke to you through the delegate repeater. But you've got VK3MET back in Melbourne on here as well. If you want to know exactly where we are and you have a good map of Deal Island or Google Earth, look for a little deep insetted cove called Garden Cove. Has a nice little beach. We go washing there every morning. That's where we landed all of our stuff. We came over on a motorised catamaran, 60-foot catamaran called the Nooramunga, which in view of its result on me, I think is an Aboriginal word meaning seasick. I fed the seagulls about 4 times on the way across. I tell you, I thought I was a better sailor than that. Apparently not. And the Nooramunga started at, it departed at 6 o'clock in the morning on Friday, got here at 2 p.m. and not entirely a flat crossing. It was a bit rough an initial part near Wilson's Promontory and Hogan Island, as a result of which I only got shaky coverage on video of Hogan Island because it was between feeding the seagulls. It was quite taxing, actually. But when we got to Deal Island, Garden Cove, we had to transfer all of our stuff into a sort of a rubber raft dinghy thing. And they brought us into shore, into about 6 inches of water, and took our shoes off and carried all of our stuff up the beach. And then I guess it'd be about 200 yards up from the beach, we've pitched camp, which I'm looking at on an adjacent hill across the other side of a creek, a little freshwater creek. There's been excellent rains here through the summer, so it's uncharacteristically green, and all the water tanks that were provided for the old lighthouse service are full, so we were allowed to use them. And please pass best wishes to your wife. One of these days I must meet the lady face to face. In fact, you must come over to our place for a meal at some stage. VK3MET and group now, VK3AML.
Yeah, VK3AML and the group, VK3MET returning, and I'll leave a pause for any other participants in the group. Yeah, look, we'd be honoured to do that at some stage, Chris. It's always fun spending time with you and chatting about. I mean, you've got such a fascinating history. You've got so many, from laser modulated beams to the I guess. Restoring music to, even my wife is nodding. I mean, you've got so much to tell. I mean, you could just keep an audience, entertained for years, I think. So, it's very, very interesting. So, obviously, it would be later there now. It's what is it here? It's just turned around about 9 o'clock Melbourne time. It's still light outside. Well, when I say light, it's fading a little bit now. And we're going to have a hot one tomorrow. What's the weather like there tomorrow?
Very mild. I think it's going to go up to about 28 degrees, but no more.
I think we've got 36 here, so it's going to get warm. But what have you got planned for tomorrow, and when are you coming back?
We disembark Tuesday morning. We're not quite sure exactly when. Nor are we exactly sure of which location we have to take all of our stuff to. But Tuesday morning, the boys are all taking quells, which means that they're not suited when within 6 hours for driving a car. Those are, I think, amphetamine based or something. And the quells are for seasickness, of course. None of us are terribly good sailors. I think Steve, after taking the quell, slept through most of it with a rather green look on his face. And I thought I was Mr. Big Man by not taking them, and ended up feeding the seagulls about 4 or 5 times off the back of the boat. I just couldn't stop. My sympathies for people who get motion sickness now is much higher than it was before. But yeah, we'll be back in Port Albert by about 2 or 3 on Tuesday. Probably bum around Port Albert for a while and come home Tuesday night. So I'll tell you more on VHF at that stage, I guess. I better hand it over to VK3 Alpha Tango X-Ray, who's been waiting in the wings. I'm sorry, mate, but this is the first time we've been on HF since we've come down here, and it's very rarely, apparently, that Deal Island gets activated. I don't know whether this is an activation, but it's at least we've got a station on the air, or at least Dave has. This is all Dave 3ASE's equipment, and he's put up the antenna very efficiently. VK3ATX and group, VK3 Alpha Mike Lima, portable VK7 on Deal Island in the middle of Bass Strait.
VK3AML, portable VK3ATX. Yes, very good. There's that delegate repeater. I've put out a message to them, and I don't know if anyone will come up. I was just going to put out another call to them and see if anyone would give them the frequency. But there could be, there might be some more people listening. Sunday night's not always an ideal night for people. They seem to tuck into bed a bit earlier, but you've got the diehards that keep DXing, like yourself. And hello to the others in the group. I didn't quite catch everyone's call sign, but that's okay. I'm busy mucking around here. It's good to work you again on another frequency, which is always good. So I've got a little bit of a tickle in my throat, I'm sorry. And that would be on the east coast of the island, I'm imagining, where you are. It hasn't come up, when I did a search for it in the maps, it hasn't come up. It hasn't come up as a request for a search. So I'm assuming there's two coves that have rivers running into. One's on the north coast and one's on the very east coast. And that's what I can see from here. There may be others, but that's all I can see on these. But I've gone into Google Earth to have a good look at it. And describing your walk, it could be either one. It could be the east coast or the north coast. So there we go. Reading reports on the bay, on that little cove, it can get a really good rolling swell coming in from the east, which would be understandable, having the Tasman Sea out there, and that gets a good swell working up on it. But I don't know what the sea's like there now. It's very flat out here. I've been down around some of the headlands here today, and it's very flat outside. Not even a ground swell happening, which is excellent. So back to you there, Chris. VK3AML, VK3ATX, VK3CH.
And VK3CH acknowledge VK3AML portable VK7 on Deal Island. Well, we're actually on the north cove. The one on the left is East Cove. That's where the lighthouse settlement is. We're kind of north, facing slightly east of north. The third one facing directly east is called Winter Cove, which is south of here. And where I'm looking inland, there are some quite high hills. It's quite a mountainous island. It's not featureless by any means. And although the little hillock that I'm on is kind of grassy, spiky grass, there are quite large forests of she oak mostly around me, just a few eucalypts, but she oak is the predominating ground cover here. She oak and poa tussock, and we're camped among low tussock on the other side of the creek from where I am. Anyway, I'll hand it round to VK3CH, VK3AML.
VK3AML on the group, VK3CH. Yeah, good day there, Chris. It's Nick, operating from home, Doncaster and Melbourne, on the loop, and getting you okay. There's a little bit of sort of noise on you, but you're over the top of it, so that's fine. Yeah, Trevor told me you were out DXing somewhere between here and Tasmania. I'll have to look it up on the map so I can sort of picture exactly where it is. But there you go. Only been listening about 5 minutes or so. I just walked in from being out for dinner. Kids took me out for my birthday, which was a few days, nearly a week ago now, probably more, and had some nice bit of seafood, and they paid the bill. So there you are. I get one bill paid for about 18 years of paying all of theirs. So, well, there you go. All right, not quite sure where the conversation was going, so I won't hold it. I'll put it back to you. Not sure who you're handing it to next, or whether it's just Trevor you're talking to. Back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Mick. You'll always be a special person to me, because I think you were the first contact I ever had when I got the ham tickets. Would you believe it's 15 years ago now? 15 years ago this year. So that's good. I can see there's a light across in our camp. I think Dave and Steve are over there just having a cup of coffee and chatting. Steve will be joining me over here a couple of 100 yards away a little bit later in the night. I decided to start the proceedings. And it's just nice to be out on such a sublime evening. I'm in my shirt sleeves. It'd be around about 18 degrees, very pleasant, not very much wind, a little bit. And looking down at the cove, there are 2 boats there, a runabout and a yacht. We've seen the yachties. They're guys in their late 20s who've sailed down from Phillip Island, of all places. And apparently it's been really good for them because the seas have been so flat. Unfortunately, it meant very slow sailing because there was so little wind to blow their sails. But they were quite interested in the VHF setup that I have about a kilometre from here, on which I spoke to Trevor a bit earlier. Just trying to think what else we've been doing. We took extensive video of the lighthouse settlement and the lighthouse itself, and quite a bit of the local wildlife. The Bennett's wallaby here are in plague proportions, and we returned to camp tonight to find that they'd gotten into our wheat bix. There's almost a brown scattering of wheat bix all around the camp as a result of the little devils. So, who do I hand it round to? I guess back to VK3MET, if you're there still, Craig. VK3MET and group VK3 Alpha Mike Lima, portable VK7 Deal Island Bass Strait.
Yeah, VK3AML in the group, VK3MET returning. No, fascinating. My wife just had a laugh about the rate on the food there you were talking about. But look, we're going to head off, Chris, and go inside and get a few things done. But are you going to be on this frequency again tomorrow night?
Highly unlikely, because by that time we'll be striking camp and packing for the Tuesday departure. So probably not. This will probably be our only HF test, but we'll be on for a few hours tonight if the lithium cell holds out. And I think it should. It's showing 12.7 volts, and 12.7 to 12.9, so it's doing quite well. These lithium batteries really have been the saviour of us, particularly with the climb up the 1,000-foot hill to the lighthouse, because they're so light and they're getting cheaper, and you can draw a lot more continuous current from them than you can from gel cells without destroying them. So I'm now singing the praises of lithium ferrous phosphate batteries, which we've been using extensively on this trip, including now. I might do it with a pause just to see who else is on, and remembering I'm in the dark, and even if I had a pen and paper, the one loss that I've had on this trip was falling sideways on one of the tracks and landing on my reading glasses, which fortunately are $2 shop types, so I'll be able to replace them very cheaply. But it's a bugger over here, not being able to write legibly while I'm on this trip. VK3ATX with a pause for breakers. VK3AML portable Deal Island Bass Strait.
VK. Yeah, there was another station there that dropped out. Go again. VK3.
No, VK3, Papa Fox.
Yeah, Papa Fox. There was another station there as well that came in loud and strong, and it sounds like his linear died or something. But just stand by again for that call. Yeah, okay. I'll get you to put down Papa Fox there, Chris. But yeah, no, it's an interesting story, Chris, and having done a lot of camping and exploring and all sorts of other things, food-tight containers are a must. Little plastic snapper buys, you get them from Coles and whatnot. Another really, really good thing I've discovered is you can buy little 5 and 10 litre and 20 litre plastic drums, which are actually
one of the best things ever to put stores in, because I do a fair bit of bushwalking, and we might go out and drive into a location and bury something in the ground, and then of course come back a month later and walk through that area, and we've got an overnight camp with supplies there without packing them in. So it's quite interesting. But interesting stories, and it sounds like there might be a few people that want to work here there, Chris. So that's good. I won't hold the frequency, and it'll be. It's a feather in your cap, mate, and it's great to work you down at Deal Island. So hopefully you'll be doing a few more expeditions, and there's lots of ways of putting this out to do some more rare DX. But all right, I'll hand it back to you, Chris, and you can control the situation there. VK3AML port 7, VK3ATX.
VK3ATX, VK3AML port 7. Could you do me a favour and write down all the call signs and act as a net controller? Because I haven't got that facility here, and at 66, please forgive me, my memory's not what it was. And I know from this trip also that my physical abilities are declining, but it might be, looking at the extenuating circumstances, the last 7 or 8 months, really we've all been, particularly those of us who are retired, have been tied to our houses by COVID, sedentary lifestyle, not much movement. And I do notice a great diminution in my ability to carry weight while hiking. I could always do that in the past, but not at the moment. So Steve Langley, who's with me, is 53. Dave is my age, but he's much more stringy and much more fit than I am. So I'm probably the unfittest of the crew. And they've done a lot of physical helping for me. And Dave, of course, has set up this HF station. I've had nothing to do with this at all. This is entirely his work. Yes, let's see what goes on. So would you be prepared to be the net controller, VK3ATX, VK3AML port 7?
Yeah, VK3AML port 7, yeah, QSL, I can do that. But what's the first chap you were talking to? What's his call sign again?
VK3 Mexico Echo Tango, Craig. Craig and I are good friends from way back.
Very good. I've got that down. All right. VK3 Papa Foxtrot, I think it was. Go ahead.
Yeah, good evening all. Sorry I missed the name of the controller. I've been a bit distracted. The pencil ran out of lead. I've been hunting for the refill. Good evening, Chris, and congratulations to you and the rest of the gang on Deal. And of course I know the guys that were on the Gippsland side of the contact last night. You're 5'9" plus here, Chris, into Churchill in the Latrobe Valley. VK3AML port 7, VK3 Fox.
Yeah, thanks. Note your post AR career, and always remember that you so generously put me up when I went to Gibbs Tech 2005 or 6, I think it was. Gosh, it's a long time ago, mate. But yeah, our dipole is positioned roughly beaming in broadside to your direction. It's a little bit off to Melbourne. And of course, you're slightly closer in terms of longitude to where we are. It's a lovely place. Let me emphasise, it's not just a rock in the middle of Bass Strait. It's like, how can I describe it? A little cut-off part of Wilson's Promontory, but much more dramatic and with much fewer people. The cliffs on the west side of the island are the highest cliffs in Bass Strait, nearly 1,000 feet straight down to the sea. And I've taken quite a few photographs, quite a bit of video. It's a place that inspires photography and video making, and Dave and I both have 4K cameras with us, so we can bring it back in reasonable quality. I'm currently recording this QSO on a Zoom H2 digicorder, although it's only mic to speaker patch. At least it'll be a record of what we do here. Hoping you don't object. Anyway, Peter, VK3PF for a reply. VK3AML Port 7 on Deal Island.
VK3YE. VK3JR.
Okay, and hopefully that control got those. 3 Yankee Echo and Juliet Radio, I think. Yeah, fine, Chris. Not a problem. That sounds excellent. I've seen footage of Deal Island in the past, and it's a really interesting spot indeed. And having seen the photography of it and also of Flinders, and having been to Wilson's Prom, I understand completely. I think I've got a pretty reasonable idea of what it all looks like, Chris. No, excellent. I heard you pop up, so I thought I'd say hi. You may not be interested in it, but as far as I'm aware, the Kent Group National Park, of which Deal Island is part, is a valid national park for the VKFF/WWFF award scheme. It's VKFF 0260. So if you do care to submit a log for VKFF to the VK7 coordinator in due course, that would be much appreciated. But thought I'd pop up and say g'day, and really do appreciate the efforts that you've put in to get down there, Chris, and to make the light contacts last night, and to fill in your time in the meantime in a meaningful way, both photographically and also on air tonight. So I might slip out and sit on the side and listen for a bit, and we'll catch up with you soon, Chris. VK3AML Port 7, VK3 Papa Fox.
VK3PF, yeah, thanks so much, and thanks for your support in the past too. It certainly is appreciated. We must make contact at the next Hamfest or whatever. Although I've recently resigned from my local radio club, I certainly still have an interest in ham radio, as you may have noticed. Now, I noticed that VK3JR, who I can hear quite well about 5 and 8, and VK3YE, about 5 and 7, have come on, and I've just yelled out to the other boys that you both are on. So they're making their way down the creek and then up the sand dune to get to the point that I'm sitting on, and you should hear them in a few minutes. I guess I better take VK3JR, Frank. Very nice to hear you there, Frank. And hello from the middle of Bass Strait. VK3JR, N Group, VK3AML Port 7 on Deal Island.
Okay. Chris, you are 5 and 9 plus here. Very, very good signal indeed. Great to catch up. Congratulations on your exploits to date. More to follow, I think. Things are a little bit unstable here, so if I drop out, don't be surprised. I'm talking to you from my house, and through about 120 feet of coax, and I can't really monitor what's going on in the shack. But not to worry, it should be okay. Well, you're obviously having a great time. Jeff, VK3VJS, gave a full report on what you've been doing on the net after the WIA news this morning. Chris, that was listened to with great interest by all. Great to hear from you. It seems a very long time since we've had a chat, strangely. But we'll rectify that certainly when you come back. I'm very interested to talk to you about NN transceivers, but this is not the time or the place for that now. So back
to net control, I guess. VK3ATX and the group VK3JR.
VK3JR, thanks very much, Frank. And the name this way is Trevor, for those that are listening. And I'm down in Orbost in East Gippsland. All right, excellent. We'll pass it quickly over to VK3 Yankee Echo. Sorry about that, you did call in first, but we'll let that one slide. And your name and where you are, and put it across to Chris, VK3AML. Over.
Yeah, thanks, Trevor, and good evening to everyone. Good signals. In fact, I'm surprised if you're using the ST817, Chris, it is doing extremely well. A 5 and 8, slightly stronger than the Peter VK3TF. But all good signals, and Frank is the strongest, 5 and 9 plus. Name is Peter, Papa Echo Tango Echo Romeo, also running an ST817, 5 watts from Chelsea. Sounds like there's quite a few people on, and I'm also recording, so I'll probably more than transmit. VK3, but it sounds like you've had a good time and a successful trip already. VK3AML portable and the group VK3YE.
VK3 Yankee Echo. G'day, Peter. And g'day, Frank. VK3 Alpha Mike Lima, portable VK7 on Deal Island, middle of Bass Strait. And now standing beside me are the two gentlemen who made this station all possible, VK3ASC, who's looking at the voltage on the existing 7 amp hour, I think it is, lithium cell, and we have another 18 amp hour cell to take us through the night, so we can be on for a fair while. The other two boys, 3SL and 3ASC, and I will initially hand it on to VK3 Sierra Lima. Take it.
Oh, g'day. Thanks, Chris. This is VK3SL. I haven't quite acquainted myself with the playlist here and who's on, but Chris has probably filled you in with the details. It's been a fabulous trip. We've been here on the island for a few days, and we've got a camp across the creek. We have to come down across the creek and up another ridge where the HF antenna, the dipole, is situated. It's attached to a pole, and it's quite nicely located. We've got a beautiful view looking over the Garden Bay here, and a couple of yachts in the bay, and lovely warm evening. It's not too bad. I'll put a jumper on, but it's on the whole, it's just a gentle breeze. So that's that's what's happening. Chris has probably informed you about his light beam activities. It's been a very successful.
It's been on the WIA broadcast.
Oh, okay, right. Chris just said it's been on the WIA broadcast. Well, it was quite an eventful night, and yes, I think we're away for over 12 hours all told by the time we got to the venue, set up and tested, and yeah, it was all good fun. It was great to see it all happen, and when you saw that red dot on the horizon, it was a great moment, because we were able to lock in and then enjoy the fruitful discussion and the amazing technical achievement. But yeah, Henry's with us as well. He's over in the tent. He's brought his ukulele. He's been playing a bit, and we've done a number of really excellent little walks. Nice walk down to a bay called Little Squally Bay today. It was just a beautiful spot with a very rugged coastline, and I have to say it reminds me a lot of Wilson's Prom being down here. There are a lot of similarities on Deal Island, and I suppose that's to be expected. So there we go. That's just a snapshot of my impressions. Now I'll need to perhaps I'll pass it over to you, Chris, so you can. I really don't know who I pass it on to from here, but greetings, Peter. Greetings, Frank, and I don't know who else is there, but yeah, I'll find out perhaps by the next round. Back to you, Chris.
Yes, via the switch room to Studio 2. Yes, we should. Actually, it's been interesting. We met the caretaker couple. They have a group called Friends of Deal Island, and they're a volunteer group who volunteer their time, come down as caretakers for 3-month stints on their own money, and maintain the island in return for accommodation here for in what really is it sounds cliche, but it's a paradise island, really. It's old lighthouse facilities at the residential accommodations at East Cove were designed originally to suit 3 lighthouse families in 3 8-hours. So needless to say, there's no lack of water storage, there's no lack of electricity. In fact, at that camp, they have a wall of solar panels, something like 25 metres long and about, I would say, 8 metres tall. And with that, they generate enough power not only for their own cooking and lights at the settlement, but also actually charge a little 4-wheel runabout. So the only vehicle on the island is electric. That, unfortunately, has been denied access to us. There's a new team at Tas National Parks who are very much more playing it by the book than the old ranger that we originally negotiated with. Read between the lines. We're not entirely happy, although it could have had a much worse outcome than what we've expected here. The weather is close to perfect for us. The trip across wasn't too rough, and it didn't cost us a huge amount. I think we each paid $250 return for the trip, and for a 5-day holiday to an ultra-remote locale, that's really very little to pay. Anyway, I'll hand it back to Net Controller as I don't have the note. Ultra-remote locale, that's really very little to pay. Anyway, I'll hand it back to Net Controller as I don't have the notebook. VK3ATX and the group, VK3AML.
VK3AML. I'll just put in a short pause for any other stations that wish to call in. This is VK3ATX, Trevor. And please, if you are going to come onto the frequency and tune up, please do so just down the band or up the band a little bit, because we're running QRP stations here. Okay, put in a slight break to see if there's any other stations. Standing by. VK3ACZ. VK3ACZ. Very good, I've got you there. I'll just stand by for a moment. VK3MET, have you got any other comments there, Craig, that you'd like to add? And other than that, I'll hand it around.
I think Craig's gone.
Okay, sounds like Craig's gone. VK3CH, have you got any comments? Over.
He's probably gone too.
Sounds like Mick's gone. Okay, VK3ACZ, and your name and location, and address it to VK3AML, please. Go ahead. Thanks very much for that. Yeah, VK3AML, Port 7, VK3ACZ, Peter, Papa Echo Tango Echo Romeo, as you know. Looking forward to hearing all about it on your Saturday night broadcast when you get back. Sounds great. Really appreciated the report we got on the repeater this morning after the news broadcast. Hope you're hearing me okay. You're 5x7 into Baronia there. Back to you, Chris.
VK3ACZ, VK3AML with 3SL and 3ASE, who are kind of standing around. Always nice to have your feedback on the Saturday night transmissions, Peter. And the preparations for this kind of precluded me doing that activity for the last half of December, but we'll get back to it. Don't worry about that. I'll hand it over to Steve 3SL, who does the the Friday night version of what I do on Saturday night. Here's VK3SL.
Okay, Chris, I did have a go a short time ago, but I don't know if there's much else I can add at this point. I'll be keen to hear a few other people chime in. But as I said, we're up on a sand dune above the beach, above Garden Bay.
This is VK3 Alpha Mike Lima testing, and for the last hour or so, you've been listening to a transmission we made from Deal Island in the middle of Bass Strait, exactly halfway between the southern tip of Wilson's Promontory and the northern end of Flinders Island, at the pole of inaccessibility. It was a 9-hour trip out to Deal Island from Port Albert on the South Gippsland coast, and a 9-hour trip back about 4 days later. So we spent 4 days there. Steve, 3SL, and I would have to admit, suffer very badly from motion sickness. So what little we managed to shoot video of on the trip was interrupted by feeding the seagulls off the stern rail of the boat. But it was worth it. It was a very interesting trip. We managed to set up the first modulated light two-way speech contact via light beam between Tasmania and Victoria as a result of Deal Island having that high lighthouse site. Of course, it's line of sight to the Victorian coast, where Chris Morley's 3CJK and Ralph Edgar, VK3WRE, were patiently looking for our light from a place called Blackwarry in the Streslecki Ranges of East Gippsland, a little bit south of Mount Tassie, along the Grand Ridge Road. At 11 o'clock, which is in 10 minutes, I'll open up for a discussion on 147.475, which hopefully we're still on. Just checking that the transmitter's still working. I looked at the current meter, which seems to indicate that the standing wave ratio is right, which means the antenna is still there. One day I'll say it and it won't be. So in 10 minutes, a live discussion, please, on 147.475, if anybody's about for that. Meantime, back to the recording made on Deal Island, the log of the 80-metre transmission.
Here on Deal Island, with Erith Island sort of out to the left, and Dover Island, which is a part of that same escarpment as Erith and Dover, which is sort of like a pair. And there's a lovely sort of passageway, quiet bay between the two. It's really a remarkable place, and lots of little coves and secret beaches and quite spectacular mountains. And it's incredible. I suppose these were all the peaks of mountains that before the last ice age. This was a part of a one big grassland through to Tasmania. Anyhow.
Do you have a comment for Frank?
Well, of course. Hello, Frank. I haven't heard you yet, but it's good to know that you're there. And Peter, YE, and ACZ. I've heard you on Chris's program on Saturday night, so I always record that. And so, yeah, it's nice to make your acquaintance too. So, yeah, hi, Frank. I hope you're well. And, yeah, all's going very well here. It's fantastic. It's an amazing experience. There's so many dimensions to it. But it'll all come out in the wash. There'll be lots of further comment, I'm sure. Okay, I'll put it back to you, Chris, and then we'll keep things cycling, I think.
Okay. Would you like to have a word,
VK3SL.
No.
Portable 7. Dave's
I can't persuade Dave, who set this up, to have a talk, but he's done a bloody good job of putting up an 80-metre dipole here on top of what amounts to a revegetated sand dune. My knees are sinking into the sand. One of the things I miss is having a portable chair, but it really was a bit too much for us to carry up the beach with our essentials. Anyway, I'll hand it back to VK3ATX's net controller. VK3 Alpha Mike Lima, portable VK7, Deal Island, Bass Strait.
VK7, VK3AML, Port 7 rather, I'm sorry. And g'day to VK3SE and VK3SL. I didn't say hello to you before, I'm sorry. And it's excellent, yeah, it's working very well. So kudos to you there, ASC, for putting that up and having the operations running quite smoothly. It's a nice signal coming into Orbost in East Gippsland. Okay, we'll throw it around to VK3PS, see if you've got anything there, Peter. If you haven't got anything there, Peter. if you haven't gone already. Over.
That's Peter, who used to be the editor.
Nothing further to add, just listening with interest to all the comments. Over.
QSL. Okay, well, back to VK3 Yankee Echo. Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Good signals all round, and interesting to hear the accounts from yourself, Chris, and Steve, and good evening to Dave. Another thing that could be of interest, maybe not, is that Sedil Island is also an IOTA island. I don't have the IOTA number with me, but I did see there's a write-up on the WIA website by Robert VK3DN, and that is about a Deal Island de-expedition that took place in 2011. So I'm not sure if amateurs have visited there between 2011 and now, but that was some quite interesting background reading. Anyway, signal's doing very well. Excellent signals, well above the noise here. So I'll make this a file. I'll be listening and I'll be recording, and I might even put up a video. It certainly tell us more and more about the island. It would be really, really interesting. VK3 ATX. I suppose it's. I'll put it back to net control. And the group. This is VK3 Yankee Echo.
Yeah, Oscar Charlie 195. 195.
Oscar Charlie 195. That's right. Anyway, was that a station, VK3ATX? Okay, go ahead. Don't know what happened there. Okay, VK3JR, go ahead. VK3ATX. VK3ATX, reverse VK3JR, yeah, fine. Sure, good evening, first contact. And also for Peter 3ACZ, first contact. I hear you a lot, the recordings I make of Chris's Saturday night missions. I spend Saturday night with the family these days and listen frequently on Sunday to Chris, and then, of course, to you later on, talking to him. So, even though we haven't contacted, I have a feel that I kind of know a lot about you there, Peter. So, looking forward to talking in the future. 3YE, you're about 5 and 8 here, but quite audible. Very good, very good. 3PS is 5 and 9, and I think that's about everyone. Craig's gone. Yeah, look, I won't hold it here. Steve, great to hear you. You're sounding well, and it sounds as though you're having a great time, and no wonder. Looking forward to catching up upon your return, and when the time comes to have a Friday night missions.
Live discussion starting in 3 minutes. VK3AML. If anybody is interested in having a chat, 3 minutes, and I'll go over to receiving on 147.475. Back to the log.
Otherwise, not too much to report here. All is well. All is well. Hot day tomorrow, and I'm going to have lunch in town with some of my cousins. So, looking forward to that. Okay, that's about it from me. I guess this trip will be fodder for many a QSO in the course of the next 3 to 6 months and beyond. So well done, Chris, for organising this, and we're all looking forward to hearing all about it in micro in due course. A bit of a historic contact this. Back to net control, VK3 ATX for the group, VK3JR. VK3JR, VK3 ATX. Trevor, this way is net control. Yeah, excellent. Thanks very much, Frank. All right, VK3 ACZ, VK3 ATX, go ahead. Yeah, Yeah, VK3ATX in the group, VK3ACZ returning. And thank you too, Frank, for your kind words. Good to hear from you, Steve. Listen to your broadcast a fair bit too. And it sounds like it's going awfully well. You probably already had the weather reports. I came into this broadcast a little bit late. But it's going to be the first really stinking hot one in Melbourne. I hope it's a lot cooler down there, but I'm sure you'll have the sea breezes. Anyway, who do I hand it back to? 3AML, I guess, VK3ACZ.
VK3ACZ and group VK3AML, and thank you for acting as net controller, 3ATX. And that was me on Deal Island on the 10th of January of this year, 2021. I was down there with Steve, VK3SL, Dave, VK3ASE, who provided the transmitting facilities in FT817 on 80 metres on that occasion, and Steve Langley's son, who is Henry, VK3FACT, 18 years old, and he had a very good set of camping skills, so that with Dave, Steve and Henry all having done camping to a great extent, I had not. I felt like I was in good hands, although they were all a little fitter than I was. Anyway, as is always our custom at 11 o'clock, we now put out a call for anybody who'd like to have a chat following that transmission, which I think was 90 minutes. So this is VK3AML calling, I guess, CQ on 147.475. And standing by for any calls.
Yeah, I'd have to come up and say hello after that one, VK3ACZ.
Yes, Peter. I thought that after 3 or 4 months it was worthwhile repeating that one, particularly as I had at least primitive method of showing a bit of video with it. This YouTube Live is problematic in terms of cutting video in. The only way I could think of doing it was literally holding a tablet up in front of the webcam while we were running, and the contrast level was excessive, the definition poor, and the picture bluish, but with all of that, at least there was some visual backup for the audio we were transmitting. VK3ACZ with a pause for any other breakers we might have. VK3AML.
VK3VJS.
Acknowledging Jeff. Thanks for coming up. I'll hand it round to Peter first.
Yeah, VK3AML in the group with VK3VJS. Good evening, Jeff. And from VK3ACZ. Yeah, thank you for replaying the recording you made there. And yes, it's been a while since we've heard it, but I think I agree with you. It was well worth hearing again, reliving some of the magic of that special occasion that you had. And I still feel like congratulating you. No doubt it was a fantastic effort worth celebrating. And I like hearing us from the other end. I've heard Peter Parker's recording of it as well, but it's good hearing it all at the business end and how clear we all were. And I regret the fact that 80 metres hasn't been as good the last few days. I was just up with the Sherbrooke Radio Club on our little camp up at Stringy Bark Creek, and we really lost 2 days because there was a massive QR Nelly coming from the Tasman somewhere with a really big storm, and 80 would have been unlistenable if you'd been out there at that time because the lightning crashes were just so regular. The S meter was stuck on 9+. But just a quick word about VK3ATX Trevor, your net control on that occasion. You might be interested to know that he's a former member of the Sherbrooke Radio Club too. I learned that because when we were on the previous camp up at Big River, I spoke to him for a while, and Jim, 3AMN, got interested and had a chat with him also, and that's where I found out he was a former Sherbrooke member. I don't know if I knew it at the time when the broadcast was on. I think the broadcast down at Deal Island was before the trip to Big River. But anyway, yeah, no, we just quickly, we froze up there the last few days at Stringy Bar Creek. It got down to 2 overnight and got to a top of about 7. And I arrived, the XYL and I arrived home from Stringy Bar Creek last night. Spoke to Jim this morning on 80, and they'd had snow there. But anyway, a bit of a roundabout way of saying he enjoyed the broadcast, and it was good hearing from Trevor as well, and remembering how much fun you guys had down there. Thanks for replaying it. Anyway, I'll hand it back to you, and you can bring Jeff into the conversation. VK3AML in the group from VK3ACZ.
Do we have any other breakers before handing over to Jeff? Nothing heard. Anyway, across to you, Jeff. You can hear when we connected the antenna on Deal Island, there was so little noise. At first, we thought something was wrong with the RF front end. I'm not joking. You could have heard a pin drop RF-wise out there. You've got a wonderful, highly conductive sea path all around you. Victorian coast and Tasmanian coast about equidistant, and line of sight to almost to both. So it was, in terms of an RF location, it was literally out of this world. You could not hope for a better place for 80 metres. The only problem, of course, is lack of power, lack of water. Have to bring everything in, have to take all of your poo and your pee out. Well, you can pee behind a bush, I suppose, but they get very shirty about poo. In fact, somebody did leave bags of poo near our camp. It wasn't us, nor was it the lady with her daughter that was camped about 100 yards from us. It was somebody in a yacht who was being extremely lazy. And we had to wear a bit of an inquisition from the National Parks lady afterwards over that. The only really nasty thing that happened the whole trip, apart from that, we couldn't have hoped for better weather, except if you noticed, looking at the stream, the last day leaving from the beach, it was pretty blowy, and Wynne Hobson, who was skippering the boat, including the little Zodiac rubber raft thing that got us back onto the main boat, had trouble controlling it in the wind. If you look closely, you probably saw that. VK3VJS, over to you, Jeff, VK3AML.
VK3AML in the group, VK3VJS. Good morning, good afternoon, Peter. Well, there's one thing about the poo, Chris. You could have taken some samples and DNA'd it. That would have been the ultimate proof that it didn't come from any of your group. Those damned yachties, they're all the same. A pack of freeloaders. They reckon the wind's free and everything else should be free. And I say that through the eyes of a powerboat man. I know what they're like. Even though my cousin Ed, Ted Silbereisen, was a sailmaker, they're a queer lot. What am I saying? At any rate, it sounds like the perfect QTH, Chris. I'd love something like that for my below 500 kilocycles experiments, right down to 10 kilocycles, excuse me, with the various very low frequency converters I have. Get away from all that crap and crud we've got to put up with here in the suburbs. So there you are. That was a good broadcast. I really enjoyed it, Chris. And of course, I would like to feel that I had played a small part in it, supplying you with the little walkie-talkie and having that first contact with you on 2 metres through Mount Tassie as you staggered up the hill. I could hear it in your voice too, as you were staggering along under a heavy load, having squashed your glasses. And also, John mentioned J.O., is it John? Frank, sorry, Frank. mentioning that I made a full report on the Sunday morning broadcast for all and sundry to hear. So I feel as if I was part of it, but on the mainland. One thing I'm interested in, what was the pilot light they were using? It was obviously a laser, and I gather it was a red one. Do you know what power it was, Chris? I heard mention a couple of times while you were lining up, listening on the Mount Tassie repeater. Was it a red one or a green one? And do you know what power it was? I say it'd have to be a decent power to cover that 134 plus kilometres, Chris. VK3AML in the group, VK3VJS.
Not really sure, Jeff. VK3VJS and group VK3AML. It was a green one, which was unusual, and we saw it flash once or twice, but not particularly brightly. And I just think it was a normal lecture lasering pen, a laser lecturing pen. So I almost did a spoonerism there. Laser lecturing pen. But I'd never asked what power it was. The boys at Blackwarry were using a 5-watt high-power LED through a collimating Fresnel lens that was about 24 inches by 18, quite a lot larger than ours, but not as efficiently lined up. They were using a box structure rather than a pyramid structure. And in a box, the problem is that there's sort of the square in the box can become a parallelogram if it's flexed, and that upsets the alignment. Whereas the box we were using, it sounds trivial difference, but it actually mechanically is greatly improving. We had a pyramid-shaped box structure for the collimating lens, and a pyramid, if it's glued along the edges, if you can imagine what I'm talking about, you can't distort it. It's inherently very strong. It can't be flexed, particularly if you glue it with araldite and tack it with thumbtacks. Well, they weren't thumbtacks. They're actually tiny brads. So rather a difficult job putting that together, so it took a while. As for being a great location, I did listen on my little Sony receiver on long wave, and in spite of the fact that a lot of NDBs have been switched off around Australia, I could hear a lot of non-directional beacons for aviation tuning across from 150 kilohertz to 400. I can't recall. I've got a notepad where I noted down some, and needless to say, the ones near the coast, Sale was prominent, SALE, in East Gippsland, and I think I heard Wynyard, but they would be all sea paths very close. I wish I had known somebody who operates on the 630 metre band so that I could listen on there, because that should have provided good ground wave coverage to both coasts right round the 24-hour clock. It's a wonderful frequency. It's just a matter of the antenna being large and difficult to organise for most homeowners in suburban blocks. Yeah, speaking to you with the handheld, I think it was a Baofeng. And I had a fairly heavy backpack and was periodically carrying the light beam unit, which was not so much heavy but clumsy, big box structure. And we were walking on a road that in some parts was 30 degrees up, because you're walking from sea level to 1,000 feet in the course of 4 kilometres. And that 30 degrees was slope was covered with she oak needles quite thickly, which would have, in the days of the lighthouse being manned, would have been swept clean. these days not maintained. So you could slip over and you could go into some nasty potholes if you weren't careful. So it was taxing would be the best description. And the heat, I think it was about 26 degrees that day, so the heat was pretty severe. And 26 degrees doesn't sound like much, but when you're on those Bass Strait Islands, 26 degrees can be very humid with it, so it feels hotter. Your body doesn't get rid of the sweat so easily. Hand it round to Peter, VK3ACZ, VK3AML, with a pause if anybody else would like to break in.
Yeah, nothing heard. VK3AML in the group from VK3ACZ. Yeah, the 10th of January. And I've got to, I can give credit to Jeff 3VJS as well, because I heard about the upcoming broadcast of yours by listening into the WIA broadcast and then the call back afterwards. And yeah, he did you justice with a good report, Jeff did. And perhaps got a few others as well as me on 80 metres that particular night. And yes, the 10th of January was in the middle of my sporadic East season too that I had so much fun with. I was just going back and looking through my logbook. One of the bits that didn't appear in the video that you played just then but comes up later is Peter Parker's brilliant effort to reduce his output power. And I can't remember what it got to, but was it 8 milliwatts or something? I know I couldn't hear him when he got to the last setting, whatever it was. I think it was 8 milliwatts. You'll be able to let us know. But it was something like that. But I think I heard him at something like 20 milliwatts. And that's from Chelsea over to Boronia. And I'm not exactly up the top of the hill either, but all the same, it was a good effort. And I was nodding my head when you said the bit about you thought there was something wrong with the radio, that it was so quiet. I get that feeling when I go portable with the club, and that's part of the reason why I'm so enthusiastic about going, because, oh my goodness, when you're in suburbia and, you know, you put up with strength 3 or 4 noise, yeah, going portable's an absolute... it's like winning Tats Lotto. I was reminded of that just this afternoon on 20 metres, just as I was about to, or just as I'd called a US station in California. He came back to me, and then a strength 9 it's interference of some kind or other. I think it's somebody's microwave oven next door, because it seems to go on intermittently like that. Came up, and it absolutely blew everything for the next minute or two. But yeah, so for the days when HF must have been quiet all the time, they'd be golden days. Back over to you, Chris, VK3AML from VK3ACZ.
Just was leaving a pause in case anybody's there. Do we have any other breakers? I've just put the squelch so that a very low signal will come through if I can get it. VK3AML. No, nothing. VK3ACZ, VK3AML. Yeah, the noise level there was spectacularly low, and the signals were very, very good. Dave has what's called a spider beam pole. I think it was a spider beam pole he took. It was at least 10 metres long, and that was used to support the centre of an inverted V dipole on 80 metres. It's the arrangement that Dave takes to Central Australia when he operates from there and calls into his wife, who is also a licensed amateur, on a daily or once every 2 days basis, I think. We were lucky that somebody had put a telegraph pole on a sand dune near our camping spot. I think that was put there for signalling purposes, probably signalling flags many years ago. And we could tape the spider beam pole to that pole, or at least use electrical, what do they call them? You know, the plastic pull strips that, what do they call them? Tie downs? I forget. And that was holding our antenna up. It worked extremely well. It was a night with very, very low wind. So consequently, we didn't have very much wind noise. Whereas up near the lighthouse, towards the end of our light beam transmission, the wind noise was almost making the audio inaudible. We made the mistake in designing of the light beam transmitter to give it plenty of good low frequency response down to 20 hertz. And unfortunately, when you've got wind noise, that means that 90% of what you're amplifying is wind. When you have a windy location, it's best not to amplify anything below about 120 hertz. Otherwise, it's all rumble. Interesting about Stringy Bark Creek with the Sherbrooke group, Peter, and the more I see of the Sherbrooke group, having now been to 2 meetings, the more I feel like making a formal joining of the group. It will be easier for me once they're in Baronia. And could you please keep me informed of when the Baronia and where the Baronia meeting is in terms of its address? Perhaps you could mention it next over, so that people not only listening on the air tonight can know where this Sherbrooke next meeting will be and when, but also on the recorded stream, which is going out at the moment. And if anybody wants to look in, as a matter of interest, if you Google VK3AML 15 May, M-A-Y, 2021, that's VK3AML 15 May 2021, you should find this live YouTube stream. Not that you'll see very much except an old bloke sitting in a khaki shirt looking into a microphone with a speaker next to him that's connected to 2 meters. But we have shown some video tonight, and I'm hoping as the weeks go by that I'll be able to find a way of interfacing video replays and stills to this webcam stream, because at the moment the only way I can play video on the webcam is by holding a bloody tablet up in front of the webcam, and it's obviously not the best way of doing it. So round 2, VK3VJS, and thanks for the sympathy with the struggle up the hill. It must have been obvious from the way my face was turning blue and my speech was becoming raspy that I wasn't quite on my last legs, but had it been another kilometre, I would have been. VK3VJS, VK3AML, and group.
Would have been a rescue chopper from Welshpool. Oh, that would have been good. Oh, that would have really capped it off. I could have got on Flight Radar 24 and followed it down and a Mercy dash to the Sale Base Hospital, or the Yarram Base Hospital. Anyway, you made up for it, Chris, with tonight's transmission with the rosy red cheeks of the little children. What's that song? At any rate, you know what I mean. Okay, this is VK3VJS with the group. I've been salvaging batteries, nota bene, batteries with 2 T's, out of a computer battery, and I managed to salvage 4 out of the 6. That's the 18650s, Chris. I don't know what capacity they are, but it doesn't have that many. I've charged up 4 of them, and they're well over 4 volts, so that's good. The other 2, of course, will end up in the oldie supermarket barrel for recycling. And I noticed at the Hamfest on last Saturday that there was a chap 2 tables up from me. He had a big box full of them, blue ones, so I bought 4 off him at $2 a piece. So he's obviously done a lot of recycling from something, but he had a lot of them. He had the friction fit ones, and he had the solder tag ones as well, Chris. I don't know whether you saw him or not, but he was 2 tables up from me towards the main entrance. So, and I've also got an article out of that little magazine, what is it called, Low QRP or something, where somebody makes up a beautiful battery pack out of those particular cells. Very good, but I don't know whether I'll ever get to that stage. I've got several bits and pieces here that rely on those cells, like a very, very bright 7 Cree torch and a single cell torch and a couple of other things, and very handy. They've got that really good life capacity, and I've got a very good charger as well that'll work in the car or through the mains. Excuse me. What else? When I went to the States, would you believe it's 3 years ago, Chris? Where does the time go? To the Dayton thing, I took my Sony 7600 CR, which I think you've got one, and I think Dave's got one, and the low band, the very low frequency converter from PK antennas or PK loops. Took that with me. I powered it with a 9-volt battery. It worked. Battery, sorry. Yeah, I said battery. Yeah, that's right. It's an easy trap to fall into, Chris, isn't it? Battery, soldering iron, luxury. Very bad habit to fall into. So we have to watch our P's and Q's. And a little Sony or Sangean tractable antenna that you wind around. I don't know whether you've got one of those, but they go out about 20 feet. And I had it hooked up on the back porch at Demetrius' house at K4DPW in Jefferson, Georgia, hoping to get Fort Collins, Colorado on 60 kilohertz. I think I could detect something there, but the only other thing that I could actually pick up was the submarine communications station at Cutler, Maine, similar to Northwest Cape, on 24 kilohertz. That was very, very strong. I was a bit disappointed that I couldn't pick up any aeronautical beacons, but maybe it was just a dead spot in Georgia. I don't know. But if you don't try, you won't buy, will you, or whatever they say. But it was an interesting experiment, and it would be great to get somewhere like that out in the middle of the ocean. Even Hogan Island would do, Chris, where you could string up a wire and a decent earth and then scan that band below 500 kilocycles. Notice I say kilocycles because I say anything below 500, I revert to the old. Kilocycles. Not kilohertz, kilocycles. So there you are. Any rate, what's the time? 23:26. I'm full of beans tonight. I tell you what, after the Hamfest, I was completely and utterly, as they say in the classics, Chris and Peter, knackered. I had the help of a couple of CBers and Adam to load my truck. I just couldn't do it. I was worn out, lack of sleep through anticipation and whatever. I didn't have a really good day. I brought home probably $100. But I did complete a trifecta, Chris. I don't know whether you ever remember, years and years ago, there was a little direction-finding radio called a Novatech Pilot Pal. They were made for aircraft. 3-band, long wave, medium wave, and short wave up to about 4.5 megs. And then they made another model called a Pilot 2, which had VHF aircraft. And then another model where they had 2 VHF bands, 70 to 85 and 145 to 174. So I've completed the trifecta. 2 of them work, 1 of them doesn't. So I've got to try and hunt up technical information on them, Chris, and see what's going on. But they're quite impressive. And when you come down to get the YL110s, you can have a look at them. So that's about it for me at the moment. I'll put it back to you, Chris. And Peter, VK3AML on the group, VK3VJS.
And we say morning.
Oh, hello, Mr. John Eggington, VK3EWG. Take it round to you on the next one. Yeah, Jeff, the VLF stations, Clint KA7OEI and I did a trip from Salt Lake City south via Barstow via Vegas to Barstow and then to Yucca Valley, which is east of Los Angeles, to meet a pioneer of NASA, actually one of the guys who designed the power equipment for the Ranger 7 moonshot back in 1964. He was then 84 in, 2008 I was over there. And he was one of the first people to arrange to blow a gas laser with a group of fellow amateurs in JPL, Jet Propulsion Labs. And then they took the gas laser up Panamint Ridge near Death Valley in California and set a 108-mile modulated light record, which was stood from 1963 when they did it until we did 168 kilometres from Mount Wellington to Mount Barrow in Tasmania. I was on Mount Barrow. Mike Groth, 7MJ, was on Mount Wellington with light beam gear. So it was interesting meeting him. But as Clint and I were driving south of Salt Lake City, Clint pointed across to the left, to the east from the main road going south to St. George, thence to Vegas. He said that's a VLF arrangement over there, and he pointed to a group of masts looking like a slightly smaller version of Northwest Cape. And I think it was somewhere near Mesquite, Muskeet, Mesquite, which is, I think, somewhere near St. George in southern Utah, or it could be northern, it could be Arizona. I'm not quite sure. Somewhere around that southern Utah area. But that's the only time I saw anything VLF in USA. And I'm not quite sure who ran it. I think it might have been Department of the Navy, of all things, for something so far inland. Now, the Sanjian, and PK loops with the VLF converter. Okay. Wasn't aware that PK loops made that. And I will arrange this this coming week, Jeff, to come down and pick up the YL1150s. I checked through the valve data book, and they would probably make a very nice push-pull linear amplifier. Two of them would do the full legal limit, and they're a low impedance tube, quite large cathodes running at high current, rather like the 640, but a bit more generously rated for HF. And consequently, I won't have to run more than 700 volts to get the power out of them, which is great. I always feel a little bit shirty when I have to run EHT above 1,000 volts, either for a CRT or for a transmitter, because death lurks. I know it probably lurks equally with 700 volts, but it's just, I think, that psychological barrier. A kilovolt is a killer volt. Anyway, across to Peter, and I sympathise with the freezing. Tonight's a killer diller out there, not only freezing but high wind, or it was earlier. VK3ACZ, and if you could hand it round to VK3EWG, please do, after you finish. VK3ACZ, VK3AML.
Yeah, VK3AML in the group from VK3ACZ. In answer to your previous query, you'll find all the details on the Sherbrooke Radio Club website, VK3 Kilo India Delta.
it is the, well, if you need a reminder, but it is the 7th of June at 19:30 hours, 36 Pine Crescent, Baronia. Probably no need to write that all down, just check on the website later on, and all should be good there. Yeah, Jim and Greg 3KWX should be shivering up there right now, although they've got a nice big fire going every day. It was certainly Soldier's Bold. The funny thing was, I had 20. I was telling somebody this morning on 80 metres that I'd had 25 contacts, 13 with DX. The USA 6 times, including Hawaii, 1 to Canada, which was a 5-9 both ways, which I was thrilled about. 1 to Russia and 5 ZLs, mostly on 20 metres with a couple of 40s in all of that. And the response I got was, is that all you did? But I will say again that I lost 2 days because of that awful QR Nelly out in the Tasman somewhere. We also had a bit of a solar flare of some kind. I didn't see it, but apparently there was some aurora going, even visible from Melbourne. Can't have helped things very much, but oh boy, I did some awfully good listening. I heard a G station talking to somebody in Brazil. I heard EIs quite a few times. Wasn't able to get them either through pile-ups or just plain bad luck. 100 watts mustn't have been enough. But Jim also experimented, 3AML, experimented with this new 20-metre beam that he'd been working on and constructed over a period of time. But a great time was had by all. And who knows, Chris, we might get you out there on one of these camps soon, because they're certainly a lot of fun. Antennas go up all over the place in these camping grounds. And while we were there, we had a look for Ned Kelly. Well, at least as most know, Stringy Bar Creek is a place where he ran into the 3 members of the constabulary that were put to rest permanently. And I was interested in the historical monuments and plaques and photos and all that had been put up around the place, until, if you read the fine print, it said nobody knows for sure exactly where the shootout at Stringy Bar Creek occurred. But it's somewhere in the vicinity, and historians are currently arguing about the exact locations. But anyway, yeah, enough of all that. Not particularly relevant to tonight's broadcast, I suppose. Again, I might... do you recall exactly what the lowest power setting was 3 Yankee Echo Peter was using when he spoke to you on Deal Island? That's just something that's been stretching my grey cells a bit, Chris. But anyway, as you said, I will hand it over to 3EGG and wait around for the next round. So, yes, over to you, VK3EGG from VK3ACZ in the group.
Yeah, fine there, 3ACZ, VK3EGG. Yeah, all very good. I was listening to this on and off earlier on, and in amongst watching the replay of the impossible engineering thing about the A380, but yes, all most interesting. Yes, Jeff, that Novatech pilot, I think I've got one of them. They're a bluey thing. They have a rotatable loop sort of ferrite rod thing on the top, don't they? And I've got a few of them somewhere, just trying to find where I put them. And they don't all work. One of them works pretty well, though. And what was that valve again, Chris? It was like a big 640 or something, was it? A YL something. Anyway, other than that, all very interesting, and fine on the Sherbrooke Club moving to Baronia. So I'll put it over to whoever it's meant to be next. VK3GG, bye.
Yeah, VK3AML, VK3GG, VK3AML, I should say. Yeah, the YL1150 is a Phillips valve. Looks very much like a 640, has the same vase. However, it only has one anode connection. It's designed as a tetrode for HF. Not much operation above 30 megs. But it appears that with the very thick wires leading to the very thick top cap, that it has slightly greater plate dissipation. It's a slightly larger bulb, larger anode structure, probably more space for it to radiate heat. And according to the specs in the book, it can do, I think, about 50% more RF power than the 640 could. The 640 also, I think I'm right in saying, it has neutralizing capacitors internally fitted for specifically for VHF use, and the YL1150 does not. So I think it's probably a better design for HF. And as I have the 640 bases, which are a little bit harder to find than the 640s are, it's a logical way to go for a linear amplifier. With two of them, I think I should be able to do the legal limit, push, pull, or whatever. And really, for high power, I probably would be only interested in 80 meters. Just looking at what John Young is saying on the text there, that the US Navy regards anything higher than 30 volts as high voltage. I suppose if you had some really big electrodes and you grabbed them really hard, you could get a lethal jolt from 30 volts, but you'd have to be trying. And John says it comes from an old US Bureau of Naval Personnel textbook. Their take was that 30 volts could be fatal under the right circumstances. I suppose if you're standing in salt water with wet hands and holding some very good copper electrodes, you might just bump yourself off. But it takes some effort. Whereas with 4 kV or anything above 1 kV, the slightest touch, and if you get it on the wrong side of your hand and are forced to grab the terminal, then it would be curtains. But on the one occasion that I touched 4 kV, and I might add blew a bit of flesh out of the end of my index finger, very painful. I touched it with the back of the index finger and my hand flew upwards and away from the contact. Thank goodness. That was back about 1980 when I was fiddling with cathode ray tubes, building oscilloscopes and building slow scan television gear, which relied on CRTs. Thank God we've seen the end of those. So, round 2, Jeff, VK3VJS, Jeff. It'll be likely that my trip to you will be either midweek or towards the end of the week, Jeff. It's looking like it's inclement for Monday and Tuesday, either wet, cold, or both. Pretty miserable anyway. VK3VJS, VK3AML and group.
Yeah, okay, Chris. Excuse me. VK3AML and the group, VK3VJS. It's not a Sangean receiver, Chris, it's a Sony SW7600GR. It's a great little receiver. And I have one of the originals too, the 775. This is very salubrious, this one. And that's the one I took over to the States with me, with the PK, very low frequency converter. He also made a shortwave converter too, Chris, and John and Peter, to listen to the Northern Territory service on shortwave, the ones that the stations that the Senate cruelly chopped off at the knees through lack of funding. Somebody should be horsewhipped over that, especially if you lived in the Territory and relied on those stations. They should be horsewhipped all the way out of Canberra. It's a disgrace, bloody disgrace, to turn those off. It'll be just like turning off the ABC here in Melbourne or in any capital city. But those little converters, I've got one of those. It just worked straight in on your car antenna, and then you had your push buttons arranged, and you could have 2310 or whatever it was. And they worked extremely well, even down here. So maybe, Chris, we'll hear something on 2310 in the future. But we won't elaborate on that.
I know who he's talking about.
What else? Oh, good to hear you on, John. I hope you bought heaps of stuff at the Hamfest. all I bought was 4 batteries, and in the car park before the start of the Hamfest, I bought the other 2 Pilot Pals to complete the trio. That was all pre-arranged, at any rate. So there you are. I sold a few antennas and bits and pieces, but nothing spectacular. But I can tell you one thing, I won't be going back to the Moorabbin Hamfest as a seller. The lighting is poor. The access is horrible through that I'm sure that lift, that service lift at the back works on water. It's a hydraulic lift. It takes that long. And I was completely, as I said before, through lack of sleep the night before, waking up at 5 o'clock and seeing a fox in the backyard when he triggered the lights. And then as I was backing down the driveway at 5:30, I looked up and here's a possum right up top on the aerial I'm using now on the ground planes, on the Diamond dual band. He thought, there's a fox around, I'm scarping up the pole. He can't climb up this high. It looks so funny. Unfortunately, I couldn't take a photo of it. It's a very wise possum. And I got there at 6 o'clock. There was nobody there, of course, in underneath, so I had to wait about an hour before anybody turned up and went through the rigmarole of unloading and wheeling it all up. You know what it's like, John. The valves fell out of the boxes. That's not me, that's you and Anthony, and all sorts of trouble and mayhem. And then to top it all off, even though the council had arranged all the tables and in the mosh pit, that's what I call the mosh pit because I was up in the gallery, they didn't supply any chairs, did they? But I knew where the chairs were, so I went into the dining room and grabbed one. Otherwise, I would have been sitting on the floor. Very poor show. And I made my comments known at the meeting at Moorabbin last Tuesday. So maybe next year they might have decent lighting and also supply chairs and a lift that actually works properly. But that's about it for the moment to Chris and Peter and John. It's fast approaching carriage turning into pumpkin time. And remarkably, I feel remarkably well. Maybe it's the testosterone gel I wiped across my belly before. Might be doing me some good in the nether regions. Shut up, Chris. I can hear you laughing from here. I'll put it back to you, Chris, and you can hand it over to Peter and John. But I think I'll bow out and head for the sack. This has been a great night. I really enjoyed it. So all the best, and we'll be looking forward to your visit later next week, Chris. And you can have a look at a couple of things I've got here since your last visit. VK3AML in the group. This is VK3BJ is saying a good evening to all. Take it, Chris.
You, Mr. Soak, had a couple of those converters too.
Oh, Mr. Soak, bringing back memories. VK3 VJS with EGG there. VK3AML. Yeah, I was kind of disappointed in the venue myself. I went there with 3SL in 3SL's car. 3SL lives about 2 k's from here, fairly close. I'm in Burwood East. He's in Mount Waverley. And we had to park in the car park of BWS store about half a kilometre away. And it was only a 2-hour car park, so Steve was worried that he'd get done. He had to go out and move the car on one occasion. So the parking was very, very bad. One thing that particularly griped me is after I've been at one of those things for about an hour, I want a cup of coffee. And the fact that the only coffee was 2 doors down and they had no food, up with this I will not put. I just thought that was very poor. And eventually, when a group of us got together afterwards, Nigel Holmes, myself, Peter Parker, Ralph Klimek, Dan Murta, and who was the other guy? One or two others. We all went across the Nepean Highway, which was no mean feat. You feel like you're a duck in a shooting gallery, and got a cup of coffee and a cake, but we had to walk about 200 metres to do it. So all told, very bad. But the worst aspect of that Hamfest, it was well attended and the stuff at it was very good. I know Dave, 3ASC, for example, got 4 cavity resonators for 2 metres out of it, which are very difficult to get at any reasonable price. And Steve got a very good signal generator, Roden Schwartz thing. So the stuff at the display was very good, and the socialising was extremely good, very nice. But the lighting, as you say, Jeff, was piss poor, and I'm not exaggerating. It was piss poor. It was so low that the boxes that were under the vendors' tables that usually had the low-priced parts that you're really after, I could not see to sort through them. I mean, basically, you could see the top layer just, but anything underneath that, you could not see at all. So I remember when one of the lighting guys switched on some extra supplemental lighting, there was a cheer from the audience, and I would have thought that would make the point, but it didn't go any further than one extra light. So, yeah, not a good venue. Not a good venue. Great Rari Free MDRC is much better. Even the Yarra Valley venues, which are variously in Yarra Glen and Healesville, I think, are better, although they're smaller Hamfests. Not that I buy much. I mean, at that last Hamfest, I bought 4 BNC to PL259 connectors, which are difficult to get, but only $2 each, so that's $8. And I bought 4 pairs of socks from 3CH, very good socks, cotton socks with the wide neck, so you don't get the things ring barking your ankles after a day's wear. But apart from that, nothing. I saw the cavities and I headed in the direction of the table concerned, but Dave got there before me. Now, I should probably hand it over to John, VK3EGG. Well, wait a minute. Is it Peter first? I think it's Peter first. VK3ACZ and group with a gap to see if anybody else would like to call in. VK3AML.
Nothing heard. Yeah, VK3AML in the group from VK3ACZ. Well, talk of the Moorabbin Hamfest is interesting. I had some thoughts as well, but probably not quite the same as most others. It was my first Hamfest I was able to attend. Didn't quite know what to expect, but I do now know why there was a lot of cheering when the lights suddenly came on. I'd not long walked into the venue, having travelled by train to get over there rather than drive. I was concerned that there may not be any parking around. And anytime you're near a municipal offices, I know the Grey Ghost will be out writing tickets on a Saturday, having experienced that once before. But anyway, I was impressed with the amount of stuff that was on offer there. I certainly did quite a few laps of the venue, willing myself to resist the temptation to buy things. But best of all, it was meeting people so that I could finally put faces to voices. So I guess I'm a little bit happier about my time over there than most others would be. But your comments are noted and accepted by me too. Yeah, it was a bit sad that there wasn't better amenities, well, at least food type amenities near the venue. And it won't stop me from attending other venues in the future. But anyway, I will whatever else there was I was going to say in this over has escaped me for the moment, so I'll hand it back, Chris, and you can put it back over to John, I guess, or whoever else is there. VK3AML in the group, VK3ACZ.
Yeah, round to you, John. I was up your way the other day. I visited Andrea in Ferndale Grove. Andrea had borrowed a pocket digicorder from me to record some interviews with CFA people, and was recovering that after, I think she had it for 3 months or so. And certainly the hill that you're on, John, is a very good one for VHF. Paul Taylor says, weren't tempted to buy one of those 2 kilowatt linear amps, Chris. He's speaking to me on text. Paul, I can probably build a linear amplifier with the spare parts I've got in this shack here and in the loft up above me for around $500 all up. To buy one of those linears at the Hamfest, I think they were asking $7,500. That's about $7,000 more than I'm prepared to pay. Over to John, VK3EGG, VK3AML.
Yes, I saw that amplifier too, VK3GG returning. Yes, well, I don't know why they didn't have the Moorabbin Hamfest in the place at Rupert Drive or whatever it's called, behind the Springvale Cemetery, because that's a good venue. I mean, the HRSA had a nice big thing there today. I was there. In fact, I thought I might have seen Jeff Sylvester there, but I didn't. And Anthony couldn't make it today because he's got some horrible cold or something. I hope it isn't COVID. But yeah, because I was expecting to see Anthony, but there were quite a few people there. So hopefully next year they'll go back to the place in Rupert Drive or Court or whatever it is, because the parking's a lot more user-friendly if you're a trader. And it doesn't have all the problems that the Moorabbin Town Hall had. And the lighting's much better too. And there's a room in there where they can have coffee and everything laid on, like they had today. So that's all for the good. I was going to say something else. I can't remember what it was. Oh, Jeff, if you're still there, you never commented about what I said about the Novatech pilot receiver. I think it's those things that I've got. But anyway, I don't know if you're still there. I'll put it to whoever it is. I think it might be your turn there, Jeff. I'm not sure. VK3, did you buy?
Yeah, I'll take it. All okay, I'll take it. Obviously. Yes, it's a shame to think that you have to go to a Hamfest with a torch so you can see under the tables or even on top of the tables. But that's what a bloke should have had, a torch. But never mind. The reason why, John, that they've taken the Moorabbin Town Hall is because the Moorabbin Radio Club comes under Kingston Council, as does the Town Hall, and of course they get it a bit cheaper. And also the tables are put out for them, but not the chairs. So I knew where the chairs were from the HRSA 30th. Remember we had the dinner? I don't know whether you went to the dinner with the talk by Dick Smith. So I knew where the chairs were, and I went out and got one pronto. I wasn't going to sit on the floor or some old box or stand all day. I'd be completely and utterly worn out by the end of the day. And the Pilot Pals, excuse me, they've been around for a long, long time, John. I think I bought my original one. It was an advert on the back page, or nearly the back page, of the Australasian Post. Now, that's going back a long time. I had to send up to Sydney for it. That was the Pilot Pal. And 3-band, long wave, medium wave, and medium shortwave band with the loop on the front and the DF meter and control and everything. Quite a nice little compact receiver, made in Japan. And then over the years they made the Pilot 2, which had the VHF aircraft band in it, and then the Pilot Action Police Receiver, with the two VHF bands, 70 to 85 and 145 to 174. That's slightly larger. The original one I have, the pilot PAL, is white, the other two are black. But they were originally designed to go in an aircraft and mount up on the dash and to use in an aircraft or a boat. Perfect. A cheap little radio direction finder that works extremely well, and only a fraction of the size of the big ones, which I have a couple of in the front room. So I've got the Trio now. All I've got to do is chase up the any service information on them and see if I can get the police action receiver going. But you never know, it might be just a bit of squirty on the switches and a bit of knocking and banging, and it might work. That's what happened to the first one. I just put some CRC in the switches and the contacts and everything, and then it just burst into life. And it's been going like a German band ever since. But there you are. Anyway, I'm going to go clear. It's nearly the bewitching hour. So good night, John. Good night, Chris. And good night, Peter. This is VK3 VJS, off and clear, and handing it back to you, Chris. Good night, all.
Yeah, all the best, Jeff. Thanks for coming on. I'll just check to see. I'm getting messages on YouTube Live that my connection has become unstable. Please try while we start reconnecting. And I don't know whether the video stream is actually working anymore. It goes for about 2 hours. Then for some strange reason it starts to get gaps, and I think we're getting into that at the moment. Yeah, I think I might have given a Pilot PAL receiver to Anna, but from memory the internals of them used germanium transistors, and I wasn't hopeful of it having high performance with solid state gear that was that old. New activity on 2300 kilohertz. It will be interesting to see if it eventuates, but all I can say is that the person concerned, who you were referring to, Jeff, is not active anymore in ham radio, but is buying up equipment still, and you can draw your own conclusions without saying too much. I will look up the VK3KID website, Peter, and I would like to be at the first meeting at the new venue. Have taken photographs at the last two meetings, as you probably know. Paul Taylor, who's looking in on the video stream. Paul, nice to meet you again at the Hamfest, as it was to meet quite a few people there, including one or two who recognised me from this video stream that I'm running at the moment. They walk up and say, "Hi, Chris." And I felt extremely embarrassed. I didn't know who the hell they were until they said, "I've seen you on the video stream," and then they gave me the name, then it was all okay. But that's the first time that it happened. So obviously some people who are going to Hamfests are watching this on Saturday nights. And I hope to make it better in that I don't have to hold a bloody tablet up to the webcam to make it a video insert. I thought that was a last resort. You can imagine I've been looking for ways and means of inserting video on the stream for weeks and have not succeeded in activating anything. Everybody is saying use what is it called, OCD or OCB software, OBS software. I got it, I tried it, it wouldn't integrate with YouTube Live no matter what I did. So I don't know. Anyway, yeah, and John Young notes that I'm getting a few gaps on YouTube live stream. For some strange reason, it works very well for about an hour, and then it gradually starts to fall apart as 2 hours go past, particularly as we get into the early morning hours for some strange reason. You'd think that the internet congestion would go down after midnight, but it seems to slow down. Paul Taylor points out that the 2 kilowatt linear amplifiers that were at the Hamfest, and I think they were at Liam Oil's table, were big dollars but beautiful work. I agree, but I'd rather have a linear amplifier that works and looks like it's knocked out of an old 44-gallon drum than have to pay $7,500 for something that looks like somebody spent a lifetime of engineering excellence to put it together. Bill Rizos makes the cynical comment, "Ha ha, you've become a star, mate. You'll get people greeting you everywhere." No, only at Hamfests, Bill. I can't imagine anybody in the street doing it. If they do, I will freak out and you'll probably never see me on YouTube Live again. Yeah, and I should mention for the people who might listen on 80 metres, particularly late at night, Paul Taylor and Wayne, whose second name I've forgotten, down Mount Eliza way, have been on 80 metres with some home-built AM gear designed by Laurie from 160 metres, and using a Class D switch mode modulator, as I understand it. And with very high efficiency, they're getting very good quality AM out on 80 metres, specifically up the top end of 80 metres, 3670 kilohertz or thereabouts. I was listening to Paul Taylor and Wayne about a week ago and was so impressed, I recorded them digitally and then forwarded an MP3 of the recording to both parties because it is so nice to hear audio of such a quality on ham radio. And I only hope that I'm doing something like as well on the 2 metre transmission tonight. Okay, with that, I'll hand it round to, I can't hand it to Jeff. Jeff has signed. So I'll hand it to, just for a change, to John, VK3EGG, to comment, VK3AML.
Yeah, fine there, 3AML, VK3GG, yes. Well, I must get a Raspberry Pi going in here one day because they're much smaller than a PC, and you can watch YouTube and everything on those quite nicely. And that would make a good little thing to put in the shack. That's another little project that'll probably happen one day, because there isn't room to fit a full-size PC in here. But Nigel's got a Raspberry Pi going very well, and you can listen to music and watch YouTube and do your internet and everything on that. And it's not that much bigger than a pack of cigarettes, although you still need the screen and the keyboard. But you could always slot that in somewhere. So that's about it. I was going to say something else, but I can't remember what it was now. Anyway, I'll put it to whoever's take it because I can't think of what else I was going to say.
Peter 3ACZ.
Yeah, VK3AML and the group from VK3ACZ. I remembered why I liked the Hamfest so much. It helps when you walk out with one of the door prizes. Hi. I know there was a very nice ICOM cup. The ICOM bag is now the bag I carry my lithium battery charger in. And you reckon you had people announcing that themselves to you based on your appearance from your broadcast. Well, I went round hearing voices and introducing myself on the basis that I recognised the voice, even on SSB. So, well, it was fun in that sense. Anyway, I'm going to follow Jeff's example and turn in before I turn into a pumpkin, and bid you and John a good rest of the night. Signals, I meant to say, if Jeff's still listening, you were 50 over 9, as you are, Chris. John is full scale, of course, because he's just up the road from me. And good quality audio from all. It's been another great night to have to relive the famed broadcast from on Deal Island, and it just reminds me it's a place I really want to go. Would really love to see it. Although if I don't, you've described it very well for us, and we're all the better for that. So anyway, thank you as usual for your Saturday night broadcast. Thank you that you put the effort in to come up with interesting material week after week, and I'll look forward to hearing it all again next week. And so yeah, just mark in your diary the 7th of June. And I don't know whether you'll be giving the little presentation on the 7th or not, but I'll talk to Jim in the next couple of days and I'll get back to you on that one. Anyway, it'd be good if you could. I just can't get enough of Deal Island. It's certainly fascinating me, that big chunk of land in the middle of Bass Strait, along with all the other chunks of land. Anyway, to the three of you, good night, and catch you all again later. 7-3 to all. VK3AML on the group. VK3ACZ will be going clear.
No worries, Peter. Just as a final comment to you all, a project that currently is occupying me is to set up a station on 2 metres, portable, capable of operating digital slow scan TV, and I finally got it down to, in addition to the transmitter, which is hanging below the bench there if you're watching the video stream, I've got a very small interface box that goes between the computer and the transmitter, which is there. We were just testing it today, myself and Terry, VK3FTJS, over in Hoppers Crossing. So we've got it working well, simplex, with very high quality images via digital slow scan. And this 10-inch tablet that I'm holding up has a camera in the back. I can just show if I hold it up to the webcam, you'll be able to see the camera lens on this, which means that this tablet can take the photo. I can then drop the photo in the same tablet into EasyPal digital slow scan software, and then the audio stream produced goes through that into the transmitter. So I only need the tablet and an interface box the size of a cigarette packet, and I'll be able to transmit pictures of wherever I am, portable. I'm thinking of One Tree Hill as a first test, or perhaps as a first test, actually, that park just on the city side of the reservoir on the Victorian Police Academy Hill, which is very close here, elevation 155 metres. That would be a very good test across to Terry 3FTJS as well. But that's a prime location, that park. It has a Chinese name. I'm just Kuchin Park or something. It's basically you'd tie your antenna to the mesh fence that's beside the reservoir, vertical extending above it, and in that way you'd get a very high location VHF, all running on batteries, on lithium polymer batteries, and they of course are very light. I've got several 7 amp hour lithium polymers here, and they're about a quarter the weight of the equivalent gel cell. So everything, including interface, computer, transmitter, everything but the antenna will fit in a backpack, including the batteries. Round to John for a final. VK3EGG, VK3AML.
Yes, 3AML, VK3GG. Yeah, it sounds all quite interesting. Should work quite well. Yes, I remember part of what I was going to say. Yes, fortunately, I always have a torch in my pocket, and I did have to make use of it at the Moorabbin Town Hall. Even when they turned the extra lights on, there were things where you still needed a torch and a magnifying glass or whatever to look at things because the lighting was so poor. But yes, the thing about being known for things. Back in the old 53.5 meg stereo days, when all the good shops like United Trade or whatever were still around, I remember when, as soon as I talked, all these people used to recognise who I was because it had quite a listenership. And every time I walked into one of those shops, as soon as I spoke, people knew who I was. And so, yes, you'd probably get that even worse now with the YouTube thing there. Anyway, with all that, I'll say morning, and it's getting rather cold in the shack with no heating tonight. And I'll say 7-3s and listen for whoever it is.
Okay, have we got any other breakers before I go back to recorded material, VK3AML? No, nothing whatever. Okay, I'll see if I can find something suitable to play in the way of recorded stuff. Looking down the list. I'm not the first person to transmit from the Kent Group of islands. The Kent Group is Deal Island, Erith Island, Dover Island. Erith Island was on a private sublease to the Stackhouse family, and they used to rent it out to academics, particularly Stephen Murray Smith and his family, his wife Nita, his son and daughter, and to Ian Turner in the days when Ian Turner was around, back in the 70s. One of the people that used to go to Erith Island, which we could see very clearly from Deal, slightly smaller island, was Ken Gott, VK3AJU, as he was in 1981. And I recorded Ken on Erith Island in the Kent Group from my shortwave receiver at Camberwell Junction back in 81. And he's talking on this to Grant Taylor, who in those days, instead of being 3HP, was VK3AW. So here's a bit of Ken Gott talking on sideband from Deal Island. In those days, I was using a valve receiver, a Murphy B40, and the damn thing used to drift, as you will hear. I had to correct the pitch all the time. We'll go to that for about 10 minutes, and then I'll have some other material to take us up to 12:30. VK3AML.
On the vertical and try it out. It's 10-foot diameter spider web capacity hat with a much smaller coil underneath. It'll be interesting to see how it performs as against the present situation. So it'll be interesting to note what you're using down there for an antenna, Ken, but the ICOM's going well. Yeah, I've got a rig sitting right here now. In fact, I've got two of them sitting here right now. They're both old Kremen CTR 66s, hybrid AM marine rigs. Of course, Portland being a fishing port, those things come along here quite regularly. And I might put one into service on 1.8. What's it, about 25 watts of AM. I'm not sure whether it's plate modulated or not. I'll have to have a look inside it. But it's in very nice condition, this one. It's been well looked after, and it was passed on to me recently. So I might fire it up and try it down on this band, put a bit of AM on. The one down in the shed's in pretty good nick too, although the case is a bit rusty. And I've just passed on an old Kremen CDR. Oh, it's a valve, all valves anyway. Don't know the number on the thing. It's only 5 watts out, but I think it's 6BW6 or something like that in the final. And I've just passed that on actually to a pro fisherman who just needs an auxiliary rig. All AM, of course. But some of them like to keep them as a standby. I got the thing going pretty well too. It was a bomb when I got it. good fun playing around with that sort of stuff. VK3AJU, portable at Erith Island. It was VK3 Roger Willie, VK3 BVS over. VK3AJU, portable 7 on Erith Island. Yes, you're quite right. I have been on the island before. In fact, it's my visit. There's a group of us come down here and we camp from, I usually come down about the 20th of September and go back after a couple of weeks and we'll stay for a month. So I was operating from here last year as a 3 kilo golf trader, and I had the cape. The antenna is just a simple long wire, about 120 feet. I've got a 27-foot aluminium pole at this end. It's fed from the end near the tank naturally, and the other pole at the other end is only about 12 feet, just leaning against the tea tree. There are no trees here that you can tie anything to. It's just tea tree scrub and stuff like that. There's no way you can, there's no gum trees or anything like that where you can throw a wire over the limb of a tree or anything like that. It is rather difficult to get any sort of antenna. I tried a dipole on 20 metres but gave it away. I found the long wire was just as effective. Last year I was running a 400-foot long wire, but that wasn't picking up too much QRLE, and I'm really doing better with a long wire of 120 feet. As I mentioned, I've got a homebrew ATU here to tune up for this band. I do have a little Fox Charlie 707 ATU, but that doesn't tune up for the 160 metre band. So to work this band, I will switch over to this the old homebrew thing, which is it's bigger than the transceiver actually. Anyway, I still haven't got Grant QDH. Is he also in Portland? I know Bob said Portland. I'm just curious where Grant is located, and I haven't got the call book handy, otherwise I could check it up that way. But I'm not sure. I think it goes back to, but if I'm mistaken, then Bob's mistaken. The VK3RW for the group VK3AJU Portable 7. VK3AJU Portable 7. VK3BVS, VK3RW.
Yes, okay, Ken. I better give you your report too. You're 5 and 9 plus 5, going down to at times an 8, but generally staying up to 5 and 9 plus 5. Now, before I do anything else, what you probably have guessed, Ken, is that I'm running my rig totally remote. I'm actually walking around the house and doing things while I'm talking to you, but I've now put the mic onto high gain, and is it still coming through well, or is there an echo? Over? No,
echo is still coming through well. Very steady on 5 and 5. Very steady on 5 and 5.
Tell him where your house is too.
Yeah, Roger there, Ken. I'm surprised I'm only 5 and 5, considering you're 5 and 9 plus 10. That's very interesting because maybe my antenna is saving another direction. I'm using a loop antenna in Vermont. Vermont, about halfway between St Kilda and Mount Dandenong. If you if you took a line from St Kilda through to the Channel 9 mast, you'd nearly come across this area. I'm in a fairly high spot in Vermont, on the side of a hill, but very close to the top of it, in a fairly large park, especially for this area, about 6.5 acres of it. So that's approximately where I am, for what it's worth there, Ken. Okay, on your situation there, and all the scrub and tea tree and so forth, and no room to put up a
no trees to hang antennas on. That's sad. You'll have to fly a kite or something to hang antennas on. That's sad. You'll have to fly a kite or something and put a wire onto it. Because from that location on 160, I would expect signals to be, very strong. But you also are using an ICOM 720, which should have an output of approximately 100 watts or so. I have one of those too, but I have a linear I made up for it, which gives me 400 watts out. And I use that in the car. So you can always pick the ICOM 720. Quite restricted in the low frequency range. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but they do have that high frequency range cut back pretty drastically, and I have experimented with the one I've got to try and improve it, but it goes back into the filters. That's where the problem is. And I don't know if anyone's or you've ever thought about that or worried about it, but I have a little bit with my one because I very often come from the mobile back into the main rig, and I always get the report, boy, there's a big difference. The home rig sounds with a lot better because of the extra low frequency response. VK3 BVS from the group. VK3RW.
Okay, I don't find it detrimental. This is VK3BVS to the group. Quite often when I tune into a group, I tune higher on the group because my hearing seems to appreciate the higher frequencies anyway, so I never find your mobile detrimental to me. Grant, and I'm quite enjoying Ken's modulation there, but of course, you're quite right. You can usually pick the ICOM rig out because it's a very specialised type of audio, if you like to put it that way. So there we are, Ken. For whatever it's worth, you're doing a fine job with that wire antenna. I'd love to know also what you're pairing it with, whether you've got a portable unit down there or what. And ideally love to be living in a place where you're staying at the moment from an amateur radio point of view, probably not so much from the remoteness, etc. But it sounds very, very nice. It'd be a tremendous place to be around if there's any DX around, I imagine. I don't know how big Erith Island is, but I imagine you've got plenty of water around you, which would be an advantage. I wonder how high above sea level you are also. A lot of questions here. How far off the coast it actually is. And approximate area of the island, it'll be interesting to note. And yes, I did work you down there before Christmas sometime. That's why I knew who you were. So it must have been 80 metres or something like that, or 40 metres I heard you. Or worked you. I'm not sure whether I worked you, but I remember you anyway. And you were saying at the time, yeah, I did work you. I'm sure you were saying that down there each year with a group of people. So I'm all sort of curious, and a lot of questions there. You might be able to put a bit of light on everything. Power applications, right above sea level area of the island, and distance from the coast. Quite a bit there. VK3AJU with VK3RW, VK3BVS. I want to know everything, don't I?
VK3BVS from the group, VK3AJU. Well, first of all, power supply, I'm running off a battery, 12-volt battery. I do have a little Honda generator here to keep the battery in trim. I'm not running full power. I'm running about half power, and I guess something more like 40 to 50 watts per I should guess. sea level would be probably about 80 to 100 feet, not much more than that, more like 80 feet, I think. I'm not very far from the sea, but sufficiently far from the sea that it's very hard to get a good earth system here. You just put down a rod and you're putting it into dry sand, and that's silica, and silica's a perfect insulator. However, there may be more of the ground operating now because we have had a lot of rain. We've had something like 40 millimetres in the last 24 hours. It washed into our tent a bit, it got into the shack. Last night I had to, or the night before rather, I had to take all the gear up and get it out of the shack because I was frightened it was getting damaged by water. The shack incidentally is a prefabricated garden shed which we brought down here a couple of years ago. It's just a galvanised iron thing that you put together with bolts. It's 8.5 feet by 6, but it's quite adequate except for the bit of the wind, the rain. Water into the place now to what's that? What else can I tell you about the island? It's about 700 hectares, I believe, but I'm not exact on that. It's about 700 hectares, and it's all scrubby stuff, undulating. It's entirely sand or granite or limestone. That's about all there is here. There's no soil in the strict sense of the word. It's a certain amount of rotted leaf and stuff, but as soon as you scratch it, there's sand underneath. It's in some ways it's a good QTH. In some ways it's not so good because where I really am surrounded by fairly high land on virtually every side, except perhaps a clear opening over the sea to the southwest. What else can I tell you about it? It's not really practicable to operate from the high points of the island. I have gone up there with 2-metre gear and got into the Latrobe repeater, into the Launceston repeater, but once you get up to the just for comfort, you try and operate from a more sheltered part of the island, even though you may get better results if you are up on one of the really high spots. High spots would perhaps be about 600 to 800 feet. I don't think they'd be any higher than that. Anyway, I'll put it across to Grant, and if you've got any more questions, don't hesitate. VK3W to take it for the group VK3HAU Portable 7 Aeros Island.
Now, that was recorded in 1981 from my original QTH Torring Road, East Hawthorn, near Camberwell Junction. It's getting towards the close of things. I'll get back to a little bit of historical material now just to close. Let me see. This is an interesting exercise, this particular audio track. In audio restoration, it's a pre-electric recording, one of the first to be made by Victor Records in San Francisco, using the funnel and diaphragm technique, pre-electric, just collecting existing audio to make the recording. Art Landry's band from one of the major dance venues in San Francisco to make the recording. Art Landry's band from one of the major dance venues in San Francisco was invited across the bay, the other side of the bay, to Oakland, where Victor had a pressing plant and a small studio. And on the 18th of June 1924, they recorded this. Now, I've put this through a waterfall display, which showed up all the lumps and bumps in the frequency response produced by the acoustic recording process, which then, with a graphic and a parametric equalizer, I could treat to get rid of hum from the driving electric motor at 120 and 240 hertz. I could get rid of mid-range hooty resonances out of this and bring the bass up on the pre-electric recording to make it sound almost as good as a recording with microphones and amplifiers that would have followed within 12 months of this date. This is recorded in San Francisco, 18th of June 1924. Art Landry's orchestra, Ripsaw Blues. Recorded in 1924, that's I'm playing that as an example of audio restoration using graphic and parametric equalizers, guided by the measurements you take on an audio waterfall display, which really is the only way to properly correct those pre-electric recordings, which are so full of mechanical resonances. This is VK3 Alpha Mike Lima with the usual Saturday night test transmission and replays of, we hope, interesting material for interested listeners both on 147.475, our regular Saturday night transmission frequency, and YouTube Live. Look for VK3AML and the date after it, and you should find me every Saturday night, or at least as many as I can organise that are consistent with having a social life. So look for us next Saturday night, 9:30 p.m. Melbourne time. I don't know what that is in UTC, but probably you can work it out. I think we're UTC plus 10 hours from memory. And very much appreciate the input of people on the text chat. Bill Rizos, John Young, just looking back, Paul Taylor, of course, John Eggington, Van Dan Escobar, Jeff Sylvester, and of course Peter, VK3ACZ, all very much appreciated. Plus, hopefully, those of you who've looked in from YouTube Live will feel sufficiently interested to come back and see us again. So this is VK3 Alpha Mike Lima on behalf of the management, which means me and my wife Prue, wishing you a very good week until next Saturday, 9:30 p.m. Cheers all.